Yellow. Lots of holes, squares, and brown pants. It's honestly one of the most recognizable character designs in cartoon history, to the point it's impossible to ever forget how SpongeBob looks, which makes it kind of interesting how over 26 years, the show has had SpongeBob not look like SpongeBob more times than you'd think. Sometimes he doesn't have legs or arms, sometimes he's made of steel, and sometimes he doesn't have any holes in him at all. And honestly, if there's one thing I've learned after making this video, I'm still not sure I know what actually makes SpongeBob SpongeBob. Now, this might be a weird place to start, but I always like to talk about I Was a Teenage Gary. After Squidward forgets to feed Gary for 3 straight days, which made Gary very ill, SpongeBob accidentally gets injected with snail plasma meant to cure Gary. And within a few hours, he's not the same sponge he was. Out of his head, arms and legs shrivel up and fall off, one at a time, while he's still talking, still himself, watching his body eventually turn into a squared-shaped snail. And if you're scared by this scene as a kid, you have every right to feel so. They intentionally wanted to scare you with this. This episode aired 3 days before Halloween in 1999, paired with Scaredy Pants as a Halloween special. It was meant to be disturbing. The transformation sequence is basically a shot-for-shot reference to David Kessler's werewolf transformation in An American Werewolf in London. Even the episode title, I Was a Teenage Gary, is a play on the 1957 horror movie I Was a Teenage Werewolf, and the internet has never let this episode go. Fans compare the snail transformations to Uzumaki, the Junji Ito horror manga. There was a Mandela effect situation for years where people swore the original airing included a scene of Squidward turning into a snail on screen that got censored from reruns. In 2022, the storyboard artist confirmed on Instagram, yeah, that scene was in the original outline, but it never got drawn nor animated, and yet hundreds of people remember seeing it anyway, which is kind of a fitting legacy for one of the best horror episodes in this show. Oh, and the writer-storyboard artist on this one, Steve Fonte, this was his last episode ever, ended his SpongeBob run on the most disturbing thing anyone had made yet, and never looked back. And even then, that was still tame compared to what SpongeBob did to himself in Gary's Got Legs. By the way, he gave Gary his own legs and slowly deformed into a snail while Gary walked around on 2 feet like a human. Like, what was that about? Look, at least in Sponge Snail, something physical happened to him. He got injected with the wrong thing, but what if the change didn't come from outside at all? What if SpongeBob did it to himself, one impression at a time, until there was nothing left underneath? This one might be the most extreme version of SpongeBob transforming. One day, SpongeBob hears the phrase, "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery," and decides to start doing impressions a bit, morphing his whole body into Squidward, into Krabs, into Sandy, into the French narrator, even into Plankton, just to crack some jokes. But then every impression pulled a little more of him out of himself, until he developed a condition called mocking mimicry madness, as if it was a known disease. By the end, he's morphing uncontrollably into whoever's nearby, and he has a complete breakdown. He leaves town thinking he's a freak and lives alone in a cave. And so the only way to cure him is by impersonating him back, until something in his head clicks back into place and he remembers who SpongeBob actually is. Yeah, except the cure is contagious. For a funny impressions episode, that's a really dark ending. Fun fact about this though, every mimic voice you hear in it is Tom Kenny. He's officially credited as the voice actor for every character SpongeBob imitates, which basically turns this episode into a Tom Kenny flex, an 11-minute voice acting demo reel disguised as a plot. Also, if this imitate the imitator to cure them joke sounds familiar, It should. The show did it 9 seasons earlier in Big Pink Loser, when SpongeBob dressed up as Patrick to break Patrick out of copying him. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so every time SpongeBob doesn't look like SpongeBob, he got some kind of disease. That's the rule. It's not. Now, even though it's not the same sponge, these guys are still considered as another version of SpongeBob, right? Episodes like and SB-129 gives you a prehistoric SpongeBob named SpongeGar, and even more primitive ones that we don't know his name, but they pretty much behave the same. He easily gets startled by something, he gets excited about dumb stuff, fire, food, hitting things. He's still SpongeBob, alright. SpongeGar's just a costume for primitive SpongeBob. There's also SpongeBuck from Pest of the West, but I just remembered it was SpongeBob's great-great-great-grandfather. In Welcome to the Chum Bucket, Plankton wins SpongeBob in a card game against crabs, which means the two of them actually committed human trafficking. Yeah. And now, suddenly SpongeBob works at the Chum Bucket. But of course, SpongeBob refuses to, even goes as far as singing the whole ballad about this isn't the same place that Krusty Krab is. So Plankton gets fed up and does the thing you're not supposed to do in a kids show. This thing is pretty much what it looks like. It's SpongeBob's brain inside a plankton-made robot. But even after all the effort, the result is pretty much the same. SpongeBob still refuses to make the patties anyway, successfully keeping the Krusty Krab in business. Which is pretty interesting in the context of this video. Sponge Snail was still the same SpongeBob, and yet it stopped acting like him. Meanwhile, Robot SpongeBob only has the brain and is somehow more like him than ever. By the way, this whole premise is a direct homage to the Simpsons episode called Treehouse of Horror 2, which has a segment where Mr. Burns puts Homer's brain into a robot body and gets the exact same result. The robot refuses to work. You could say SpongeBob writers straight up borrowed the bit, which is kind of great. And the sad song SpongeBob and Krabs sing when they're separated, "This Grill Is Not a Home," is a parody of Somewhere Out There from An American Tail, with Krabs' vocals sung in the style of Louis Armstrong. Honestly, this whole episode is doing more work than it lets on. Everything we've looked at so far has been something happening to SpongeBob. Bad injection, old movie references, card game gone wrong. But what happens when SpongeBob decides to change himself on purpose for no reason at all? This one might be the first ever SpongeBob plot about not being himself. So in Muscle Bob Buff Pants, SpongeBob wants Muscles to impress Sandy. He tries her workout routine, but obviously can't handle it, considering his highest bench record is just a pair of dolls. So he sees a commercial for these inflatable anchor arms and just buys the shortcut. Not gonna lie, the whole thing actually went well for a while. Everyone at Muscle Beach treats him like a different guy. Bodybuilders swarm him, he's got fans, until Sandy signs him up for the anchor toss competition, where he has to actually lift the anchor and reveal everything. Now, he's just SpongeBob in a Speedo again. If you were a kid in the 90s, this whole episode is a joke that gets funnier the older you get. The Anchor Arms infomercial is a beat-for-beat parody of every late-night fitness product commercial from that era. Bowflex, Thigh Master, the Ab Roller, all of it. The show knew exactly what it was making fun of. And even Muscle Beach itself is a pun on the muscle bivalve, because it's Hillenburg, and he's a marine biologist and he can't help himself. Just like SpongeBob, who can't help himself to get a new pair of pants, when he doesn't have any spares left. Now, here's where the show discovered a new trick it could pull, and decided to use it repeatedly. To square pants, or not to square pants. One day, SpongeBob accidentally shrank all his pants in the drawing machine, so he has to go to the mall to replace them. But they're sold out of square pants. I guess there's not many people who wear square pants in Bikini Bottom after all. So he buys round ones instead. That's it. That's the transformation. But for whatever reason, Patrick doesn't recognize him. I mean, Patrick's not the sharpest tool in the shed, and that's all it takes for SpongeBob to decide his entire identity is gone. He renamed himself SpongeBob Round Pants, goes back to the Krusty Krab like he's a new employee. Squidward, sensing an opportunity, plays along and starts training him to be lazy. But SpongeBob just absorbs it like the sponge he is, sleeping on the job, snapping at customers, burning patties, and all that Squidward would do. Mr. Krabs isn't fooled for a second though. He looked at him once and basically went, "The pants don't change who you are," which is kind of the whole point. SpongeBob choosing to believe one happened based on nothing but a pair of round pants and a friend who doesn't recognize basic shape. But then the show did this again with new pants, and this time they played it completely straight, with a straight pants. This time the show is not messing around. It's one of those high wind days, so SpongeBob, feeling cold on his knees, buys a pair of long pants off a salesman. But the second he puts them on, it makes a world of difference to his life. Everyone starts admiring him like he's some kind of sophisticated adult. For whatever reason, in this world, wearing long pants is apparently a sign of class. And even the one person you would think would call it ridiculous, Mr. Krabs, just goes along with it, saying SpongeBob is too good for the fry cook job now, or even the cashier, or even a greeter. He even willingly let SpongeBob quit the Krusty Krab because he's simply too good for the place, over a pair of pants. So now SpongeBob has to get a job at a fancier restaurant, introduces himself as Sponge Robert, and even goes to a party with performative adults who watch black and white art films for fun. I mean, everything is too good to be true. At least until he remembers that today is the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy reboot premiere, and he can't get in because it was knee-high rated only. The good thing is, everything is solved with a few quick snips from Mr. Krabs, and he got his Krusty Krab job back. That was one of the most random plots this show has ever made. But absurd as it is, it's fun to watch, and if anything, it kind of confirms something we've all suspected for years. The reason everyone thinks so low about Squidward all this time is that because he never wears any pants. If only he wears it since day one, he'd already be a better musician than Kelpie G is. Just something to think about. But round pants and long pants next to each other, and it's kind of a fascinating little pair. Same joke with opposite outcome. That being said, pants apparently carry a lot of weight in Bikini Bottom. But what if the change is even smaller than that? What if the look barely changes at all? Not normal from season 6. You know this one's coming, right? It all starts with Squidward telling SpongeBob, basically as an insult, that he's not normal, which is pretty normal as far as Squidward goes. But on that exact day, SpongeBob takes it as a real problem he has to fix. So he watched a self-help video called How to Be Normal and starts changing immediately. Over 3 weeks, his face fills out. The freckles disappear. The holes disappear. His buck teeth go away, but somehow become smooth, rounded, and generic, like a bar of hand soap. But of course, the biggest of all is that his personality changes to be a regular office guy. He starts printing Krabby Patties from a desk instead of cooking them. Gets a cubicle in the kitchen. The funny thing is, Not Normal was completely overlooked when it first aired in 2008. I mean, season 6 was a rough patch for the show, and this episode got buried. But over the last decade, fans went back to it saying, Not Normal is one of the sharpest depictions of neurodivergent masking in animation, specifically autism. The idea being, when you strip out what's weird about someone, their face, their habits, their specific dumb little quirks, you don't get a better version of someone. Instead, you get less of a person. There's also a small detail I love in this episode too. In the How to Be Normal instructional video SpongeBob watches, the normal fish it shows him are live-action photos of actual fish in an actual aquarium. So the show is implying normal means the version of fish that don't have a personality. Literally an animal in a tank. That's a pretty sharp visual joke buried in a season 6 episode. The only thing that snaps him out of it, by the way, isn't self-reflection either. it's seeing Squidward go normal too, which feels like staring in a mirror and seeing your own blank face wearing someone else's skin. Speaking of skin, these next two versions of SpongeBob also change skin tone, just in a more natural way. Goo Goo Gas is the episode that goes naturally with this whole thing, because it pulls off two transformations in 11 minutes. So one day, Plankton gets this idea to invent a spray that turns people into babies to steal the formula, because it would be easy to take something from a baby, right? Well, the gas works as intended at first, and he could easily grab the recipe if not for the fact that the second dose of the gas acted as an antidote too. So the next day, he grabs what he thinks is the revised baby gas, sprays Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob, and now they come out the other side as old men, because it was a completely different canister of senior citizen spray. Well, no matter whichever version of SpongeBob he is, he's always more capable to disrupt Plankton's plan at the end of the day. However, there's a real reason this joke lands on kids specifically, actually. There's this idea in early childhood development about kids under about 5 don't fully understand that a person stays the same person even if their appearance changes. That's why little kids will say stuff like, "When I grow up, I'm going to be a dinosaur." To them, body changes and identity changes are kind of the same thing. So when this show does the different look, different personality bit over and over, they're just using the exact logic of a 5-year-old as a joke. But this next one takes that whole different look, different guy idea and runs it as far as it can possibly go. Because what if the different looking SpongeBob isn't SpongeBob at all? It's another guy entirely, walking around wearing his face. This one is actually always fascinating to watch. Well, to me at least. It's Frankendoodle from season 2. Most people remember it for the meme. But if you go back and actually think about what Doodlebob is, it's kind of unsettling. Doodlebob is basically SpongeBob without everything that makes SpongeBob, SpongeBob. He's missing the holes, no belt, no socks, no shoes, and most importantly, without the positivity of SpongeBob. And he's actually violent. He beats up Squidward almost immediately, and he spends the rest of the episode trying to erase SpongeBob and take his place. It's the polar opposite of SpongeBob trying to replace the original. But other than the episode itself, someone actually just published a piece that called Doodlebob Nickelodeon's creepiest villain, 24 years after this aired. And someone in the comments said, "I thought Nickelodeon's creepiest villain was Dan Holder Tighter She's a Fighter Schneider." Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was pretty funny. Aside from the joke, the doppelganger thing, an evil copy of yourself shows up and tries to take your spot, that's one of the oldest horror setups there is. Goes back centuries. Jekyll and Hyde does it. Poe wrote about it in William Wilson. The show is doing that entire lineage of horror in 12 minutes, played for laughs on Nickelodeon. Also, 2 fun voice acting facts for you. The live-action human artist at the beginning who drops the pencil into the ocean, it's played by Doug Lawrence, the same guy who voices Plankton. So the human who technically creates the whole Doodlebob disaster is, in real life, Plankton. And Doodlebob himself, voiced by Paul Tibbitt, who was a producer on the show, which counts as the first time he'd ever voiced a character. You know what? Having watched all of them back to back, I just realized the show doesn't actually have a rule for this stuff. Sponge Snail says the body defines you. Robot SpongeBob says the brain does. SpongeGar says it's neither. Normal SpongeBob says it's the quirks. Every episode has its own answer to what makes SpongeBob SpongeBob, and none of them agree with each other, which is kind of amazing for a kids show, and also kind of why it works. Anyway, if you're the kind of person who likes going through episodes like this, digging around in the weird corners of Bikini Bottom, connecting stuff the show never tells you it's connecting.
SpongeBob SquarePants has been on TV for over 2 decades, and in that time, he's had 6 different body shapes, 5 shades of yellow, and at least 4 animation styles that'll haunt your dreams. He's gone from this,
Back it up! Back it up!
To this.
I mean, how bad could it be?
To whatever this is. But here's the thing. SpongeBob's look has never just been a style. It's also a sign. A visual diary of what's happening underneath the sea and behind the scenes. Because every time SpongeBob changes, it means the show has changed too. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's chaos, and sometimes it's a total creative meltdown with a backstory you would not believe. From pencil and paper charm to digital weirdness and multiverse madness, there's always a story to be told in Bikini Bottom. The first season of SpongeBob is just, different. Back then, SpongeBob was hand-drawn. Pencil on paper, every frame scanned and painted by someone probably running on cold pizza and caffeine. And it shows in the best possible way. This was the only season made entirely with traditional cell animation. No fancy software, no digital shortcuts, just sweat, ink, and error-prone human hands trying to keep SpongeBob's eyes the same size, and failing gloriously. But that was the magic. SpongeBob's design wasn't consistent, it was dynamic. His shape would shift from shot to shot. His pores wandered, his skin was a pale, washed-out yellow that somehow made the underwater vibe feel more real, like you were actually watching a bootleg cartoon drawn at the bottom of the ocean. Even the backgrounds had personality. Sometimes it's flat, sometimes grainy, and sometimes weirdly beautiful. They felt like they were painted on a damp paper, and that's not a dig. That's part of what made Season 1 feel alive. Season 1 didn't just look underwater, it felt underwater. The colors were more muted, kind of matte, not the neon crisp tones we'd get later. The sound design had this soft, constant water ambiance, bubble effects, distant waves, even little things like Squidward face planting in the sand kicked up bubbles, not dust. It's why some fans joke that if you didn't see the intro, you might think the newer SpongeBob takes place on land. I mean, you could tell from this scene alone which season this scene is from. But the real power wasn't in the drawings, it was in the people behind them. Steven Hillenburg, a marine biologist turned cartoon rebel, pulled in a bunch of animation weirdos from Rocko's Modern Life and gave them one directive. Make it funny, make it weird, don't overthink it. So they didn't. They filled every frame with scream, nonsense reaction shots, and expressions that felt like meme templates. And even though SpongeBob's design broke every rule, the appeal was undeniable. Season 1 wasn't perfect. It didn't want to be. It wanted to be alive, and it gives SpongeBob a life. But unfortunately, this kind of hand-drawn technique means more expensive episodes, so they had to make some changes in the future. Season 2 is the first season to go digitally inked and painted, which basically means SpongeBob finally discovered computers. The smudges are gone, the wobbly lines are tightened, the colors are also brighter, smoother. But don't worry, the charm stayed. SpongeBob still bounced like a rubber band on espresso. His face still stretched like pizza dough. The infamous new cheeks show up around dying for pie, though they were clearly still in beta mode. And even though it was digitally inked, the animation was still mostly hand-drawn. You could feel the effort. Especially early in the season, there was a ton of movement. The animators started pushing the characters' faces like they were made of Play-Doh. You got the nightmare stare, the ultra-detailed reaction faces, the kind of shots that made you feel the energy. And behind all that madness is C.H. Greenblatt. Greenblatt didn't draw SpongeBob like a character. He drew him like a panic attack in square form, and it ruled. The show wasn't just trying to be funny anymore, it knew it was funny. SpongeBob wasn't just a weirdo sponge now, he was the guy. Even Bikini Bottom leveled up. Backgrounds got more textured, color gradients started popping in during emotional moments. It still felt underwater, just like the ocean had gotten into art school. SpongeBob isn't the only one that got upgraded. Patrick ditched the M brows and got his classic Z slants by episode 4. His pink color also got a retouch. SpongeBob's color? Somewhere between beige, white cheddar, and cartoon anxiety. Still asymmetrical, still off-model in the best way. This was also the season that blew SpongeBob wide open. Graveyard Shift, Sailor Mouth, Something Smells. These episodes brought us so many memes, people still quote them to this day. And if Season 2 was the glow-up, Season 3 was the peak form. This is SpongeBob graphics running at maximum settings. Peak weird, peak funny, peak what did I just watch and why am I still laughing 3 hours later? The animation is still bouncy, but now it's precise. Every line feels intentional, every gag hits with surgical timing. Yeah, it's a little stiffer than Season 2, especially in the second half, but what it loses in stretch, it makes up for in focus. SpongeBob's shape leaned more rectangular, his eyeballs shrank a bit, and those Aaron Springer cheeks, they're now a standard feature, like he's always on the edge of laughing or snapping. The acting was also in peak form. Tom Kenny crushed the job this season. SpongeBob's timing, micro-reactions, the pause before the punchline delivery, all of it is razor sharp. This was the season that gave us the camping episode, Chocolate with Nuts, Just One Bite, and the Krusty Krab training video. Every frame of Season 3 screams perfection. This was the last season that still felt underwater, not just digitally rendered to look like it. It's crazy to think how much they improved for each season, not just in animation, but also overall quality. But under all that gold was a goodbye. This was supposed to be the end. Season 3 is the final breath of the golden era. Right before the mutation, before the humor turned into a fever dream. This was the last time SpongeBob felt fully SpongeBob. It was building towards this, the original movie. This was the final act, the big, weird, emotional curtain call Steven Hillenburg always planned. A 90-minute mic drop for the weird little sponge that somehow took over the world. And honestly, it delivered. Right from the first frame, you could tell something had changed. This wasn't your Saturday morning SpongeBob anymore. This was widescreen. The animation stepped up hard. We're talking deep shading, soft gradients, smooth outlines, and sunsets that looked straight up beautiful. That scene alone, where SpongeBob walks through a moody orange-pink sky or skywater, looked better than half the animated films released that year. The animators knew this was their chance to show off, and they did. They went full Looney Tunes style, but with restraint. The characters were still two-dimensional, still SpongeBob, but the expressions? They went off-model in the best way. Faces warped, eyes bulged, cheeks flapped like pancake batter. There are expressions in this movie that the show has never attempted again, and probably never will. Even the character designs got more subtle tweaks. SpongeBob looked more refined, thinner outline, richer color, a little more polished than Season 3's squishy chaos. You could argue he looked grown up, just a little, which is perfect because that's the story the movie told. The Goofy Goober rock solo? Iconic. The David Hasselhoff surf rescue? Based. The one last tear in Shell City? Emotional. And yet, it worked. This movie had a single purpose, to end SpongeBob on a high note, and Hillenburg nailed it. Unfortunately, Nickelodeon wasn't done. They saw SpongeBob riding David Hasselhoff like a jet ski and thought, you know what? Let's make more. Just without the guy who created it. And that's why things got weird in the following seasons. At first glance, Season 4 looks mostly familiar. The animation still has some of that movie polish, but then you look closer. The animation style in Season 4 is a mixed bag. The first half is not bad. Episodes like Fear of a Krabby Patty even stand out, with slightly looser animation, brighter colors, and more expressive faces. In fact, that episode has a completely unique look. SpongeBob's design in that episode is slightly sharper, more angular, and it's never used again. I don't know why. That one episode is a strange, beautiful anomaly. But after that, things slowly start getting meh. SpongeBob and Patrick get larger pupils, their faces shift slightly, more soft round bean than chaotic sponge. The classic old cheeks mostly vanish. SpongeBob barely uses them anymore. And while Squidward stays mostly untouched, the rest of the cast starts getting a weird, almost sanitized makeover. Some episodes feel pale and washed out, kind of like Season 2's duller tones. Others are more saturated, but still lacking warmth. It's just inconsistent. Some frames look like Season 3, others feel like they've been passed through a cold Instagram filter. You can tell they're trying to make it look more polished, but in the process, they lose something. And the animation itself? Well, it walks a tightrope. By the time you hit episodes like The Pink Purloiner or Best Day Ever, you feel it hard. This sponge is moving weird.
Mr. Sun came up and he smiled at me. Said it's gonna be a good one, just wait and see.
I'm not saying it's bad, it's just noticeably average. Like they were trying to keep things safe. The backgrounds still feel professional, they do the job. Bikini Bottom still feels underwater, just with less personality. SpongeBob personally, however, that's where the real shift begins. SpongeBob's not quite himself. His energy is still high, but his character feels simplified. He's louder, fuzzier, less sharp. It's the start of Flanderization. that slow cartoon death spiral where characters get boiled down to one exaggerated trait. In SpongeBob's case, goofy innocence becomes relentless stupidity. He's not broken yet, but you can feel it coming. There are still funny episodes in the season, still weird moments, but something is undeniably different. Season 5 basically picks up right where Season 4 left off, but this time the stiffness kicks in like a karate chop to the animation budget. Seriously, it starts stiff. The movements slow down, reactions flatten, characters barely stretch. Midway through Season 5, the show ditches traditional hand-drawn sketches entirely and goes fully digital, using computer tablets for both animation and storyboards. Yes, you could argue that it's still technically hand-drawn, but it's just not the same. No more pencil lines means no more sketchy energy. This is the beginning of what some would call the Photoshop era. Every line is smooth, every pose is calculated, and every character moves like they're scared to rip their pants. Starting with Pest of the West, the switch is official. No paper, no pencil, just styluses and screens and a lot of Control-Z. It's not all bad though. Oddly enough, while the animation got rigid, the coloring actually improved. There's something weirdly nostalgic about it. The color palette from Season 1 makes a kind of return, just in a brighter, cleaner form. And the backgrounds? Still beautiful. There's a ton of effort in the scenery. Bikini Bottom starts feeling more built out, more lived in, even if the people walking around it move like they're in a turn-based RPG. You'll also spot new background fish, slightly sharper outlines, and for some reason, Plankton gets huge. Like physically, his model is noticeably bigger. Not sure why, just is. As for Mr. Krabs, his color shifts from classic crusty red to some strange glossy pink-orange-red mix. It's like he's just covered in glass now. It's not a plot point, it's just happening, permanently. There are still fun moments, don't get me wrong. A few episodes still deliver. Clever visual gags, decent pacing, solid timing, but you can sense the show losing its spontaneity. This is the last episode that feels tolerable before things really fall apart. The final era of, okay, this is fine, before SpongeBob starts melting into a dumb, expressionless husk of his former self. Because entering Season 6, something went wrong here. Like, seriously wrong. Season 6 is where SpongeBob officially transforms into an underwater biohazard. The character's downgraded, the pacing is off the rails, the animation is a mix of unsettling stillness and weird facial goo. Everything now looks cheaper. Like Bikini Bottom started outsourcing its paint job to the discount aisle at Office Depot. SpongeBob himself takes the biggest hit. His design this season is bad. He gets those giant puffy cheeks drawn as a default setting, and not just when he's smiling. Sometimes he has puffed cheeks while his mouth is open, which somehow looks worse than you think it does. This is also the time where gross-out humor hits terminal velocity. We got The Splinter, To Love a Patty, House Fancy, and Pet or Pests. Those episodes aren't just gross in theory, they're animated to be gross. Zoom-ins on wounds, pus bubbles, skin textures, you name it. They're trying to traumatize kids for good. At this point, SpongeBob lost his charm, especially his bounce. And in the middle of all this, Nickelodeon dropped Truth or Square, a shiny widescreen 10th anniversary special. It looked really nice, but it felt like putting a new roof on a house full of termites. It couldn't hide the fact that SpongeBob was in an identity crisis. As for Season 7 and 8, let's just call it what it is. It's Season 6 with a new haircut. It's not worse, but that's not saying much. The animation is still stiff, reaction shots look like they're animated in PowerPoint, SpongeBob doesn't bounce, he twitches. There's this weird disconnection between the jokes and the motion, the timing feels robotic, and just expressionless in general.
Rude! 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 Rude!
They don't do anything bold, but it also doesn't do anything right. It's just kind of there. Oh, but there is one beautiful, weird little blip. It's a SpongeBob Christmas. It's a full stop motion. No weird cheeks, no floaty face, just a lovingly sculpted foam version of our guy. It's creative, it has that handmade heartbeat the rest of the season forgot. And then, it ends. Not the show, but the era. Season 8 also serves as the final stop before SpongeBob goes full HD, the last time we see him in glorious, boxy 4x3. And somehow, that's the most emotional thing about it. Because after this, it only gets worse. This is technically the first full season animated in HD, fully widescreen and 16:9. But don't let the aspect ratio fool you. The animation is still robotic. The colors are painfully bright, almost too clean, like someone scrubbed the screen with bleach. SpongeBob's eyes got a little bigger, his face takes up more of his body again, which should feel right, but the fluidity just isn't there. In fact, fans of SpongeBob consider this period to be the show's lowest point. Thankfully, it was somewhat short-lived and salvageable because all it took was the return of Hillenburg, which he did to write the story for and oversee the production of the second SpongeBob movie, Sponge Out of Water, released in 2015, midway through the show's 9th season. And you can feel it right away. With Hillenburg's return, Sponge Out of Water returned a certain spark and charm to SpongeBob and his world. SpongeBob himself saw a design overhaul, returning him to a smoother appearance, much like in the earlier seasons.
I think we have a few minutes before he gets here. Oh, he's right on top of us!
The more outlandish aspects of recent seasons were toned down drastically, and the humor. Once again, it regained its age-defying innocence, glimmers of what made SpongeBob so special in the first place. And when the second half of Season 9 airs, things get better. It's not a total transformation, but the DNA is clearly shifting. Reaction shots aren't stiff mannequins anymore, they're animated again. Squash and stretch is back on the menu. Even SpongeBob himself looks better. It's not quite the golden age, but it's the first time in years the show starts feeling hopeful. Stephen Hillenburg's return didn't just recharge the movie, it recharged the show. He wasn't even back in full control, but his presence was felt. But tragically, Hillenburg's return would also be short-lived. In November of 2018, after a short battle with motor neuron disease, Hillenburg passed away at the age of 57 during the production of Season 12. In the end, Season 9 is not a perfect season, but it is a turning point for the following season. Because from the jump, Season 10 to 12 ditches any lingering stiffness from the past. Everything is animated, even things that don't need to be. It's a return to squash and stretch, not just as a tool, but as a philosophy. Characters have weight again, their eyes don't just move, they boing. You could say it's a technical flex. And the color work? Bright, bold, like a highlighter. A few visual tweaks help make this version of SpongeBob feel slightly more familiar. Mr. Krabs is red again, not that strange pink-orange mix from Season 6 to 8. SpongeBob's old cheeks start showing up more, and thankfully, his nose stops growing every season. No more Squidward cosplay. Personally, I would say this version of SpongeBob looks better than he has in a long time. But even though the animations never looked more polished, something still feels off. Because everything is a gag now. There's no pause, no breathing room for subtlety, it's just expressive to the point of being exhausting.
Tough mallows. Could be more marshy.
The show is no longer about telling stories with charm and rhythm. It's about being a meme machine. It's viral content for the sake of popularity. This era is sometimes called post-sequel SpongeBob, referring to how much the second movie's influence bled into the main show. It's not subtle, but it is stylish. One bittersweet note though, Stephen Hillenburg was still involved in this era. He passed away in 2018 during the production of Season 12, the last season he directly contributed to. So maybe he acknowledges Red Mist too? Who knows? His presence wasn't as impactful as in the early years, but it was felt, especially in tone. After his death, the show was in uncharted waters again. By the time we hit Season 13, SpongeBob isn't just a cartoon anymore. He's a multimedia empire. Aside from the main show, we've got CG spin-offs like Camp Coral, The Patrick Star Show, plus a flood of shorts, specials, and experimental formats on YouTube. This is the SpongeBob multiverse era. Let's start with the flagship, the main show. Season 13 continues the ultra-fluid, rubber hose style from 10 to 12, but cranks the visual comedy to max capacity. Every frame is wild. Not to mention, after Hillenburg's passing, Nickelodeon greenlit the one thing he never liked. Spin-offs. And not just one, a whole buffet of them. Camp Coral is a CG animated prequel that reimagines SpongeBob and the gang as kids at summer camp. The animation is polished, Pixar-like, with a soft plasticine sheen. The Patrick Star Show is a spin-off centered around Patrick running a surreal talk show with his family. The style is closer to the main show, with a little adjustment on the color. We also have Sponge on the Run, 2021, SpongeBob's third movie, but unlike the last two, this one is entirely CG. The visuals are honestly stunning. Soft textures, lush lighting, expressive animation. But narratively, it's a mess. A full reboot of SpongeBob's origin, which contradicts the show, crammed with cameos and plot holes and clearly made to launch Camp Coral. It looks amazing, but it's more of a product than a story. At this point, people start to lose hope for SpongeBob. Some said it's not special anymore, it's just a franchise and it will never be the same again. And somehow, they managed to prove us wrong. Starting in season 14 and continuing into season 15, eagle-eyed fans began noticing something strange. SpongeBob looked more classic. No, it's not season 3 all over again, but there are clear, deliberate callbacks to the early 2000s style. We're talking about thicker line art, less crisp, more hand-drawn in feel, less exaggerated bounce, more grounded movements like in seasons 2 and 3, facial expressions that stay on the model longer instead of morphing every frame, also with occasional pauses and old-school comedic rhythm.
It's Spot! He's stuck in the tree!
You can feel the animators pulling back from the meme injection style of seasons 11 to 13. Maybe they figured out the golden recipe after all this time. Hell yeah! You could say this era blends modern polish with retro personality. The animation is still digital, but the timing is less hyperactive.
It's only been 1 hour, but I can't take it anymore.
Even the backgrounds feel warmer, softer gradients, a few more painted textures, and better use of color depth. Not quite the grainy watercolor vibes of season 1, but definitely closer than anything we've seen in over a decade. Whether it's nostalgia, better direction, or just animators finally getting breathing room, it's working. After years of SpongeBob being treated like a meme generator, season 15 feels like the team remembered who he is. He's not just a face you stretch for laughs, he's a character. A weird, optimistic sponge in a weird little world, who's funniest when the absurdity is rooted in personality, not just punchlines. It may not be perfect, but it's a promising start. Maybe we'll see something better in season 16. SpongeBob has been through more visual phases than most cartoons survive. He started as a wobbly doodle with too many teeth, turned into a corporate mascot with weird faces and slapstick jokes. Then somehow, against all odds, he found balance again. It was a slow identity crisis in motion. When Hillenburg left, the style clearly lost its soul. It got louder, cleaner, and cheaper all at once. SpongeBob was no longer himself. But with time and some long overdue creative course correction, the animators started rediscovering the weird, imperfect rhythm that made SpongeBob, SpongeBob. From hand-drawn madness to sterile stiffness to post-meme redemption, this yellow sponge outlived every prediction. SpongeBob has been playing with alternate universes throughout the entire show, ranging from prehistoric versions of the main cast, medieval times, to a Wild West version of Bikini Bottom. Most of the time, they build an entire episode around it. But sometimes, it's just a random 3-second bit that's hardly ever brought up again. And honestly, I think the second one is funnier. So first things first, I think the most obvious place to start is in the early seasons, because that's the first thing that comes to mind for most people. From season 3 is probably one of the biggest names when it comes to this concept, bringing us back to prehistoric Bikini Bottom, Conch Street, I should say, because we never really saw the whole city. SpongeBob is Spongegar, Patrick is Patar, and Squidward is Squog. It's pretty much the same dynamic in the same neighborhood, just with more facial hair and a story about discovering the concept of cooking. SpongeBob already has a snail, who's also named Gary. Squog was already miserable. Patar was already eating his own shirt. Nothing has changed. I personally think this is a golden standard of the early SpongeBob comedy, just for the fact that there were so many memorable moments in this episode, even though none of them really spoke a proper sentence.
Gunaga Patar, Gunaga Spongegar.
Gunaga Squog, Gunaga Spongegar.
And 22 years later, you can still pretty much tell the whole story off the top of your head. Men fight, men eat till full, men are happy. But then, not every alternate universe episode has a simple story like this. The Algae's Always Greener, for example, has a slightly different angle. Now, instead of going back in time, the story is about Plankton, who tries to switch lives with Mr. Krabs using the, what's the device called again?
I wish I could somehow just switch lives with him, just to know what it's like.
Almost everyone in the story is still the same. Except now, Plankton is the owner of the Krusty Krab, and Mr. Krabs is the one trying to steal a Krabby Patty. And just like the title suggests, the whole episode is basically about Plankton discovering that getting the life you always want is not all rainbows and sunshine. Running a business is never easy. Handling your wacky employees and teenage daughter can become really tricky at times. But that was still nothing compared to experiencing your old nemesis trying to rob your business every single day, practically being an exhibitionist.
Good grief, he's naked!
I mean, those two are classics. How can you not like them? I think around this time, Nickelodeon must have realized the potential for this kind of alternate universe story, especially for longer episode formats. There's just so much detail to cover that you can't fit it into a regular 11-minute episode. So, they didn't waste any time making Dunces and Dragons for the Season 4 special. This is actually one of the first episodes where they came up with a more serious plot. The story is that one day, SpongeBob and Patrick came to a medieval festival, and through some unfortunate concussion accident, they were teleported back to the medieval version of Bikini Bottom. Now, instead of just 3 primitive guys goofing around, we follow a heroic tale of SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidly trying to fulfill their destiny as it was foretold in the Kingdom's prophecy. They're the heroes that were promised to save Princess Pearl from the evil Planktanimore and his magical crystal ball named Karen. The whole episode is solid and entertaining, especially any Squidly singing part.
You were bad, you are to blame. Now hang your kingly head in shame.
I still love to watch it on occasion. Not to mention, this is where we learned that Squidly is the one cursing his own bloodline to suck at playing the clarinet, which means Squidward actually has someone to blame for his musical career after all. To this day, I've still wondered what would happen if Squidward came with SpongeBob and Patrick to medieval times and met Squidly himself. I'm sure they'd have a ton of interesting conversations. And if Dunces and Dragons are the medieval version of SpongeBob, then Pest of the West from Season 5 is the cowboy version of the story. They just love to expand Bikini Bottom's lore around this time, huh? After realizing everyone in the city has at least one great-grandfather with some notable achievement to brag about, SpongeBob wonders if he has one too. And after a quick trip to the city's library, he finds the answer.
Hey, look at here! It's a statue of SpongeBob SquarePants!
And just like Dunces and Dragons, it brought us back to another kind of heroism tale again. Plankton, the dead eye, terrorizes the city, leaves everyone in fear, and SpongeBob has to save them through a series of unlucky accidents. The episode is pretty solid, in my opinion. The whole Western setting is fun, however, I can't really remember anything that stands out from it, except for the coffin ride bit and the first time Patrick sang the Dead Eyes song.
Dead eye, dead eye.
But maybe that's just me. Funny enough, after Pest of the West, this kind of alternate Bikini Bottom story pretty much disappeared for a while. I guess just because the ideas started to get stale? I don't know. I mean, Plankton always has to play the villain, SpongeBob is the hero, Patrick is the sidekick, and everyone else is filling whatever's left of the story, right? They rarely mix things up. Well, they do give us Karen's virus in Season 11. It's not a season special extended episode like before, but that doesn't mean it was bad. In fact, I really liked it. So the story's that Karen catches a virus after hanging out with her friend, and just like any other infected computer, she starts bugging out. So Plankton thinks someone has to get inside the system and kill the virus, but that would be a suicide mission. And there's no one stupid enough to even try it, except...
But Plankton, how am I supposed to... Whoa!
SpongeBob got converted into a line of code and transferred to Karen's system. And from there, he has to wipe out the virus that infected Karen. Now, the whole journey inside Karen is cool to say the least. The whole 3D art style blended with SpongeBob's regular 2D animation is really pretty. But the more interesting part is what's actually living there. Inside the system, there's an antivirus program Karen built herself, which takes the form of muscular planktons. Or more specifically...
Yeah, I'm Karen's version of Plankton. You know how she'd like to see me?
There's also a Karen version of Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and SpongeBob in there too. All shaped a little weird, but according to Muscular Plankton, that's just how Karen sees them. SpongeBob eventually manages to wipe the virus off the system, even though Muscular Plankton has to sacrifice himself in the process. But even though he's just code in the program, it's kinda heartwarming. Despite everything Plankton has put her through, all the failures and schemes and years of nonsense, Karen still sees him as the hero who shows up when she needs him most. Love is truly blind, as they say. As for the next alternate universe kind of story, they made SpongeBob in Random Land in Season 12, but I'm gonna save that for later in the video. So we have to skip to Season 13 to get another one. The good thing is, they didn't just give us one, but 2 episodes. The first one is Welcome to Binary Bottom, which feels like a bit of a spiritual cousin to Karen's virus. They made a whole universe where everyone's a robot. There's SpongeBot, SquidBot, Plankbot, and the only organic creature in the entire dimension is Karen, who, in this universe, is somehow a purple fish with puffy, square hair. I never imagined Karen's fish version before, but that definitely wasn't what I expected. The story eventually escalates into evil Sandy Cheeks terrorizing the whole city because I don't know why. I guess it's just opposite day logic for this episode. But yeah, the strong point with this one was never the story, it was just about the whole spectacle of Bikini Bottom, seeing everyone in the robot form and figuring out how each one works. Now the second one is Dopey Dick. Now, despite the questionable choice of words there, the episode wasn't bad at all. It tells the story of Fishmail Tentacles, an ancestor of Squidward who was looking for work from town to town and ended up at the Jelly Squirt Inn. Fishmail would later get kidnapped by Pat Buck and forced to join the expedition to hunt the mythical creature.
Dopey Dick.
It's always nice to see Squidward, or Fishmail here, as the center of the story. Actually, does SB-129 technically count as an alternate universe episode? I mean, he did go somewhere outside of Bikini Bottom, but there's just nothing there. Huh. And just in case you don't know, this episode is pretty much a parody of Moby Dick. You know, the classic tale about hunting the legendary white whale? Again, nothing really stands out about this episode, but considering this is Season 13, it's not bad at all. It could be a lot worse. As for the most recent alternate universe episode, we have Bizarro Bottom in Season 16. Now, the story is that SpongeBob falls asleep on a bus after shift and wakes up in Tankini Top, which is basically Bikini Bottom, but everything is slightly wrong and weird. His counterpart is a guy named Sponge Tom, who lives in a melon, works at the Crunchy Crab, and makes tacos instead of burgers. Squidward's counterpart, Octward, is friendly and well-behaved. And of course, the rest of the population is here too, with their own twist. The whole plot is pretty much about SpongeBob panicking and screaming at every single one of them for being weird. I don't have to explain too much about it since I've already made a video about it a while ago. Let's just say that Bizarro Bottom is the weirdest one in this list. So those are the big ones, right? Where they made a whole episode based on the alternate universe. But I still have one more kind of alternate character story. And I'd argue this one is funnier, because sometimes SpongeBob doesn't need a whole episode. Sometimes all they need to do is keep a running joke about a mirror, something that this show has been doing since Season 2. And somehow, nobody really talks about it. So just in case you never noticed, SpongeBob has this running gag whenever SpongeBob, Squidward, and Patrick look in the mirror. And when it happens, their reflection will interact with them as if they had their own consciousness. For SpongeBob, we saw this for the first time in Something Smells. In the episode, SpongeBob makes himself a sundae out of onions, ketchup, and peanuts for breakfast, and spends the rest of the episode wondering why everyone keeps running away from him. In one particular scene, he asked Patrick about it, but because Patrick has no nose, he just thinks that SpongeBob must just be ugly. So they do the reflection test. Unlike Patrick or real SpongeBob, his own reflection smells the bad breath, grabs a hammer, and destroys itself to get away from him. And SpongeBob took that as confirmation that he was, in fact, ugly. Now, on the surface, Mirror SpongeBob is basically just SpongeBob living on the other side of the glass doing funny things. Except, I think he has a slightly higher self-preservation instinct than the real one. He appeared again in the episode Wet Painters, where SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally get paint on Mr. Krabs' first dollar and spend the entire episode panicking about it. At one point, SpongeBob catches his reflection in Mr. Krabs' mirror and tries to get some advice on what to do.
You're on your own, pal.
The reflection just tells him he's got nothing to do with this, and dip. And then in Chimps Ahoy, there's one scene where they're trying to invent new technologies to help Sandy. And Patrick genuinely believes he invented a parallel universe, which is just a mirror. SpongeBob tells him it's already invented, but when Patrick walks away dejected, Mirror SpongeBob said this.
Well, I thought it was a pretty good idea.
Then he gets eaten by the Flying Dutchman in Ghost Host. And finally, he would compliment SpongeBob's long pants in SpongeBob Long Pants.
There goes a real man.
So SpongeBob's reflection is essentially a slightly more straightforward version of him. It won't help SpongeBob when he's in a jam, but it'll occasionally show up just to be nice for no reason. You could think of Mirror SpongeBob as someone who says what SpongeBob is always thinking, but never has the guts to say. Meanwhile, Patrick's reflection is a different story entirely, where SpongeBob's reflection is mostly just goofy and occasionally unhelpful. Patrick's reflection feels like he has an agenda. It shows up across 4 episodes, and every single time, it says something Patrick does not want to hear. The first time is Rule of Dumb in Season 4. Patrick finds out he's descended from royalty and quickly becomes the worst version of himself, taking people's food, demanding stuff, and doing all sorts of bad things. And then, at the peak of it, when everyone's gone and he's finally alone, he walks past a mirror.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Ah! What did I become?
His reflection looks like a monster version of Patrick, and tells him that that's what he's become. Then Roller Cowards in Season 5, where Patrick is in the bathroom trying to wind himself up about a roller coaster, and his reflection cuts straight through it.
You can do it? No, you can't. You're a big crybaby.
And this is the important part. Patrick says, "I thought we settled this last time." Which means they've had this conversation before. For all we know, they could have had a conversation after Rule of Dumb, which also means Patrick knows his reflection is going to show up and give him grief, and he's already tired of it. Meanwhile, the Great Patty Caper has a smaller moment. At one point in the episode, Patrick looks at his reflection in a train window and immediately decides it looks suspicious. His reflection gets an annoyed expression and just walks away.
SpongeBob, does that guy look suspicious? I think he might be spying on us. Hey, where'd he go?
It's slightly different in No Pictures Please in Season 11, where Patrick sees himself in a bus window and his reflection gives him the idea to become a tour guide, which leads to one of the most chaotic episodes of the later seasons, and arguably, Patrick's reflection is directly responsible for that entire disaster.
I could be a tour guide.
That's what I said.
So, as we can see, Patrick has something living in his mirror, and it does not think highly of him. Often, it would gaslight him, judge him, and occasionally just give him terrible ideas. You could think of it as the Green Goblin mirror scene from Spider-Man. There's something dark underneath all that comedy. And then there's the most interesting of all, Squidward's reflection. The first appearance is in Squidward in Clarinet Land from Season 7. There's a scene where Squidward gets trapped in a surreal clarinet dimension chasing SpongeBob, and at one point, he ends up in a hall of mirrors. At this point, his reflections look back at him, and then they stuff clarinets into their mouths and play directly into his ears as loud as possible. They're just, torturing him for fun. Now, you could argue this one doesn't count since the whole Clarinet Land sequence might just be Squidward's hallucination. But then we get Squid +1 from Season 9. The story is that Squidward needs a +1 for an art gallery opening and spends the entire episode trying to find anyone who wants to go with him. But no one really seems interested, and he runs out of options. Eventually, he realizes the best +1 for him is his reflection.
You'll always be my +1. Aww.
The reporter covering the event describes it as a thing about sadness, which is either sweet or the most depressing thing in the entire show, depending on how you look at it. And, wouldn't you know it, the last time we saw Squidward's reflection is in the episode SpongeBob in Random Land. So, Random Land. SpongeBob and Squidward get sent to deliver a Krusty Krab order to Random Land. And Random Land is exactly what it sounds like. A dimension where nothing follows any rules, everything is random, and kinda hard to describe. At some point they find a wall of doors. Squidward starts opening them one by one, and behind each one is a different, warped version of himself. Some are funny, some are just strange, and then he opens one that looks exactly like his bedroom. It just looks like home at first, and then it scares us with this scene. Red Mist Squidward. Now, most of you already know what this is. Red Mist is one of the most famous SpongeBob creepypastas, a fake, lost episode story about Squidward that got passed around so many times it basically became mythology. The image that came with it, Squidward standing in a dark room with red glowing eyes, became one of the most recognizable pieces of SpongeBob fan lore on the internet. But stepping back from the creepypasta stuff, there's actually something kind of interesting and funny about what this show does with mirror versions of each character. Like, there's a running theme with each of them. SpongeBob's reflection is still the same SpongeBob. Maybe he's a little rude, a little more self-preserving, but fundamentally, he's the same. What you see in the reflection is genuinely all there is. This could be a depiction of how honest and straightforward SpongeBob is. Like, even his mirror can't find anything deeper, because SpongeBob never really hides anything to begin with. Meanwhile, Patrick's reflection is the part of him that knows more about his true nature. Underneath all the stupidity and innocence, Patrick has a self-awareness about his darker side that, unfortunately, he never acknowledges. I think Patrick's reflections are the closest to what you would call an alter ego. I also believe this running gag is almost single-handedly responsible for why we have so many evil Patrick theories over the years on YouTube. As for Squidward's reflection, it's kinda tricky. Similar to Patrick, Squidward seems to acknowledge the presence of his reflection. The difference is, he's kinda fond of it. Especially after the Squidward +1 episode, it even looks like they had a conversation from time to time. Now, even though the reflection also tortures him sometimes, Squidward never really hates him like Patrick did, which, unfortunately, is a depiction of how Squidward sees himself. Maybe Squidward knows deep down that his mind is the one torturing himself more than anyone. He loves himself, for sure, I mean, that's not debatable, but there's just so much burden in it because he never really loved someone else. At the end of the day, the only one who never leaves is himself. So his reflection is just a presence that serves as his extension of thought, visualizing every single little thing that Squidward really feels about himself, whether he wants to or not. It's never easy being Squidward, huh? So yeah, from prehistoric cavemen to robot dimensions to an alter ego version of themselves, SpongeBob has been doing this the whole time. And the further down the rabbit hole you go, the funnier it gets, at least for me. I really hope they talk more or even make an episode about these alter ego characters. It could be interesting. Or maybe they already made an episode about it and decided to delete it. Who knows? But speaking of things the SpongeBob team tried to delete, if you want to keep going, I also did a whole video on the rejected ideas and scrapped concepts from SpongeBob.
Barnacle Boy is old enough for a senior discount, despite the boy in his name. And Mr. Krabs, how old do you have to be to serve in a war, open a successful restaurant, and still be running it yourself to this day? You see, a while back, I spent an entire video trying to figure out how old SpongeBob is, and I came out the other side with an answer. A weird one, though. But once you've asked that question about one character, then you start looking at Squidward, or Mr. Krabs, or Sandy, and you're gonna start asking the exact same thing. Then you realize they don't have nearly as many clues as SpongeBob does. See, at first I thought this was gonna be a fun little counting exercise. Add up some birthdays, do some math, slap a number on everybody. Roll credits. It was not that. Not even close. Because every single time I pinned down an actual age in this show, I found something behind it I kind of wish I hadn't. So no. Instead of just a video about numbers, you're also gonna see why the show keeps dodging the answer. So naturally, we start with the Yellow Man himself. And like I said, I already talked about this one, so I'll keep it quick.
Well, as of today, I am...
The short version is that we could see his birth date on his driver's license, which is July 14th, 1986. It shows up in Sleepy Time, shows up again in No Free Rides, and then mysteriously, every later version of that license has the birth date wiped off, almost like somebody at Nickelodeon realized people were doing math. The problem is, if we're assuming Bikini Bottom runs on the same calendar we do up here, then 1986 makes him about 13 when the show starts, which is insane for a guy with his own house. So in the last video, I went a different, unfavorable route to Camp Coral. In the show, he is about 10 years old, and because baby Pearl's still in diapers and Pearl turns 16 in Whale of a Birthday, run that 15-year gap forward and SpongeBob lands somewhere around 25, 26 during the main series. Or you could cut to the chase altogether and just do real math. You'll get 39 if you just count from 1986 to today. Pick whichever one hurts less. And somehow, even though I already spent a whole video just on SpongeBob himself, he is proven to be the easiest one since he has the most clues in this show, unlike the rest of the characters you're about to see. Coincidentally, in the same episode that gave us SpongeBob's license, Sleepy Time, it also flashes Mr. Krabs' driver's license. It writes, Eugene H. Krabs. Born November 30th, 1942, which means when the show premiered in 99, he was 56, pushing 84 these days. A solid boomer number, right? Except 1942. The show tells us over and over that Krabs is a war veteran. He's got the Navy buddies. There's a whole episode where his old crew shows up, and a bunch of them came back wrecked. One's got a torpedo still lodged in him. And then there's the Krusty Krab training video. You know, they say that after the war, Krabs fell into a deep depression, and that founding the Krusty Krab was the only thing that pulled him out of it. Now, if we layer the birth date back on, born in 1942, young adult in the 60s and 70s, and the fact that Bikini Bottom supposedly is sitting near the Marshall Islands, and the timeline they keep landing on is Vietnam. Now, I want to be clear, the show never names a war. This is just me as a fan connecting dots. But the dots connect really well here, except he might have a second license, because as we see in the episode Mall Girl Pearl, his birth date is changed into September 25th, 1960. Now, I have no idea which one of these licenses is fake, although honestly, you would expect someone like Eugene Krabs to have a few fake identities, right? You know, for his shadier little ventures. But according to the second one, it would mean that he was no more than 39 years old when SpongeBob first joined the Krusty Krab, and around 66 years old this year. You see, the first one is more interesting with the whole Vietnam veteran stuff, while the second one is more believable for the modern timeline. If anything, the two license thing might just be Nickelodeon's way to keep Krabs' age floating somewhere in that 50s to 60s range. So yeah, let's just say the old man's pushing 60. But speaking about Krabs and his undying love of money, here's the freebie that comes bundled with him: Plankton. You see, Plankton and Krabs go way back. As Friend or Foe tells us, the two of them were childhood best friends at Poseidon Elementary. So whatever age Krabs is, Plankton is basically the same. Call it early 50s, give or take, which is impressive, you know, considering he's just a single-cell organism. Though I got a feeling that Plankton is a few years younger. It's just maybe because of his size or the way he talks. Yeah, I don't know, just a hunch, which also means these two have been at war with each other for more than 30 years over a recipe. One guy got a burger joint, a daughter, and depression. The other guy got a computer wife and a lifetime of humiliation. And while we're on the topic of Plankton, it would be the perfect time to talk about his wife, too, Karen. Since Karen was practically made by Plankton in his younger days, it's no brainer to guess that Karen is definitely younger than Plankton. That is if we're not counting her CCTV days.
In those days, I was just starting out as a security system. Plankton and I met when he installed me.
Let's say Plankton built her in his early 20s. You know, right around the age a guy starts getting lonely after one too many years locked in a lab. That'd put Karen somewhere around late 30s, maybe even early 40s. Then again, the concept of old doesn't really apply to her since she's basically immortal. She could always update her software, as well as her broken parts. But yeah, still significantly older than SpongeBob. Okay, those two are about as straightforward as this gets. Our next guy, not so much. Now, despite being my favorite character, I'll be honest, Squidward gave me the biggest headache of anyone, because the contradictions on this guy are everywhere. He's got no confirmed birthday in the show. Unfortunately, the closest lead comes from the SpongeBob SquarePants Annual 2014, one of those Egmont books which puts his birthday on October 9th, but naturally no year, so that only gets us halfway. Now, you'd think the answer is just, I don't know, middle-aged maybe? But people have tried. Oh, God, have they tried to get anything out of him. What we actually know for sure is that in episodes such as SpongeBob You're Fired or the original Fry Cook, Krabs says Squidward has seniority over SpongeBob. So yeah, unsurprisingly, he's older than SpongeBob. Everything beyond that fact is just an educated guess. There's a pretty common belief that Squidward started at the Krusty Krab around the same time as Jim, the legendary original Fry Cook, which would make him one of the very first employees of the Krusty Krab. But then, if the Krusty Krab opened after Krabs came home from the war, that's sometime in the 70s, and for Squidward to already be working there, he'd have to be at least 18, which would push his birth back into the early 60s. Yeah, I don't really buy it, to be honest. I mean, it kinda explains why he and Krabs get along, two guys roughly the same age, not to mention Pearl also calls him Uncle in some episodes.
Don't be jealous, Uncle Squiddy. I made one for you too.
It's just that if Squidward were really creeping towards 60, I feel so bizarre for knowing SpongeBob has spent the entire series relentlessly abusing a senior citizen next door every single day. No, they have to be closer than that. And as much as I'm avoiding bringing Camp Coral into this conversation, it did help me to get the best answer. You see, when SpongeBob and Patrick are shown to be 10 years old in Camp Coral, meanwhile, Squidward was already a teenager, and by the look of it, he can't be more than 10 years older than SpongeBob. And so, if SpongeBob is about 25 years old, Squidward is around 35 at the absolute most, which is the exact answer as everyone's, because when I went hunting for an actual birth year, the number that kept surfacing was October 9th, 1977, which would make him roughly 9 years older than SpongeBob. It's just that I can't seem to get the proof or the calculation as to why people decided it was 1977 and not the other. I don't know. So if any of you actually know where that year originated, please tell me, because it's quietly driving me insane. That being said, I think people will mostly agree he's somewhere in his 30s. Old enough to lord it over SpongeBob, young enough that he really has no business being this miserable yet. As for Patrick's special, because everyone got impatient and just invented an answer for him. If you go to the wikis, and you'll see it stated like a fact, Patrick Star, born August 17th, 1984. And naturally, just like Squidward, it came from the same SpongeBob Annual 2014 book that gave us Squidward's birthday. Again, it's without year details, but more on that later. For now, at least we got a place to start. But then you go to a different set of fan sites, and it's July 19th, 1984. It's still the same year though, at least. And both of them have the exact same problem SpongeBob's license had. 1984 makes Patrick 15 when the show starts. A 15-year-old who owns a rock and lives alone? Which means SpongeBob is older than Patrick, except Camp Coral turns around and shows them as the same age, both 10 at camp, best friends since they were practically babies. So, Patrick's official birthday isn't in any episode. It can't agree with itself, and it contradicts the one canon fact we actually have about him. So, the honest answer here is, sadly, the boring one. Patrick's somewhere right around SpongeBob's age, 25 to 28-ish, and the show could not care less beyond that. I think he's whatever age the joke needs him to be that day, which for Patrick feels about right. Then there's Sandy. She's a proper adult, right? She lives alone, runs a lab, builds rockets, clearly a grown woman. I would personally put her mid-20s to 30s. Again, some fan sites stated she was born November 17th, 1985. Pretty much the same with SpongeBob and Patrick. I think this one is pretty straightforward, except Sandy's the one that actually ruined my whole afternoon. And it's got nothing to do with her number. It's the fact that Sandy is a squirrel, and a squirrel only lives about 6 years. Yeah, SpongeBob's a sponge, which means he can live for centuries. So if the show actually ran in real time, the way 2 decades of episodes suggest, SpongeBob wouldn't have one friend named Sandy Cheeks. He'd have outlived generations of them. Like, the Sandy in Season 1 and the Sandy in Season 13 would not be the same squirrel. He'd have buried that whole family and just kept going. I think I'm getting too far with this. I don't think the writers meant that, but the math means it. And now you're thinking about it too. You're welcome. The next one? Haha, yes, Mrs. Puff. People estimate 40s, 50s maybe, based on the information that she was born on January 12, 1958 on some fandom. Again, it's just speculation. It kind of makes sense that she has quite an age gap with her new man, Mr. Krabs. Not to mention, she looked like she had a long teaching experience. But honestly, nobody's really trying to figure out Mrs. Puff's age. And I think I know why pretty fast. It's because once you start trying to search anything about her past, you stop caring about her age. This is a woman who has been to prison multiple times, whose husband, Mr. Puff, is canonically a lamp on someone's wall, because he got caught and turned into one, who has had genuine on-screen breakdowns about a teenage boy she can't stop failing. And then, not to mention, the whole criminal accusation on her name. I came for a number, I left needing to lie down. So Mrs. Puff's age is middle-aged, probably, and that is the least alarming fact about Mrs. Puff. We're moving on for both our sakes. Oh, and I can't leave out Gary, because Gary might be the funniest case of all. In Bikini Bottom, snails are pretty much treated as cats, as well as worms being treated as dogs. That's just natural, considering he always meows, lives with SpongeBob, and gets fed out of a can. So your first instinct is to put him on a pet years of age, maybe 2-3 years old, like a regular cat. Done. Except everyone says his birthday is November 27th, 1989, which, surprise, drags him into the exact same mess as SpongeBob and Patrick. And then it gets really silly, because the show can't even agree on where Gary came from. Plankton's pet says SpongeBob adopted him from the animal shelter. And then there's a possibility you get from episodes like Have You Seen This Snail? That SpongeBob has had Gary since he was practically a kid, raised him since he was tiny. If SpongeBob raised Gary from a baby snail, then Gary isn't a 2-year-old pet at all. He's been around almost as long as SpongeBob himself. So, which is it? Is he the cat? Is he the 1989 guy? Is he SpongeBob's lifelong childhood companion? Well, the answer, of course, is yes, all three, at the same time. because he's Gary, and this show would rather meow at you than give you a straight number. The same could also be said for our senile duo. After all that squinting at licenses and doing snail math, let's talk about the one duo where the show actually wants you to know how old they are: Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Because their old age is practically their identity. These are two washed-up, retired superheroes rotting away in the Shady Shoals rest home. And here's the part I love. Barnacle Boy actually tells us his age out loud in an episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. He's 68. The boy qualifies for senior discounts, and he's still got boy in his name. As for Mermaid Man, it's still in the gray. Some say 72, some say 97. One fan page even floats a birth year of 1917, which, if you actually believe it, would have put him in the Navy around World War II, but nobody really knows, and the show couldn't care less, because Ancient and Senile covers it just fine. However, if there's anything that we could be so sure of, he has to be older than Barnacle Boy. I mean, he looked like he had more health problems than Barnacle Boy, so it's safe to assume. Here's the thing though, these two aren't even playing the same game as everyone else, because Mermaid and Barnacle Boy are two of the only actual humans in the show, with some superpowers arguably. And maybe that's exactly why the show's so comfortable handing them real numbers. When there's no fish biology, no snail math, no weird sea creature lifespan to hide behind. Age is just age. No! Simply because every honest answer would have broken the joke. You can't laugh at crabs being cheap if you're picturing the war. You can't enjoy Sandy and SpongeBob's friendship if you're counting squirrel funerals. So maybe the ambiguity of their age serves as their own mercy, ironically. So how old is everyone in SpongeBob? Old enough that you really shouldn't ask. And here's the thing, this connects to something I was chewing on in the last video, because all this agelessness, SpongeBob doesn't have an age for the same reason he doesn't have an arc. And weirdly, that's exactly what makes the very first episode work as well as it does. So this is Bubble Bass. He's been on the show for the better part of 3 decades.
Thy canker sore bottoms curdle seaweed and sour the ocean.
And if you haven't watched SpongeBob in a while, you might be looking at this clip right now and saying to yourself, wait, he's still here? Yeah, he is. In fact, modern SpongeBob has put him in over a dozen episodes since 2014. Get this, there are episodes literally named after him. There's an entire in-universe TV segment called The Big Bad Bubble Bass. He has his own apartment, his own mom, his own recurring beef with the Krusty Krab. He's not a guest character anymore. He's part of the cast. The thing is, just like the other 2 characters you're about to see later in this video, he wasn't supposed to be here. And not only are they uninvited guests, they're the three characters that almost destroyed SpongeBob, because these three characters represent three different mistakes the modern show keeps making with its own past. From least bad to worst, Bubble Bass debuted in 1999, season 1 on the episode Pickles. He hides pickles under his tongue, ruins SpongeBob's confidence for 10 minutes, gets caught, runs out of the Krusty Krab forever. He's the perfect one-off villain, the kind of character you write so the episode works, and then you go and put him in the drawer. And for 7 full seasons after that, he stayed in the drawer. Then, in 2014, season 8, the episode Plankton's Good Eye, he comes back, just for a quick cameo. Easy callback for older fans. Nothing crazy. But the show kept going, and once season 9 hit, suddenly Bubble Bass was just everywhere. Bulletin board, Whirly Brains, Larry the Floor Manager, Krabby Patty Creature Feature, Squidnar, Swamp Mates, Hiccup Plague, Bubble Bass's Tab, Moving Bubble Bass, A Place for Pets, High Sea Diving, Captain Quasar the Next Iteration, plus crossovers in Camp Coral and The Patrick Star Show. And here's the thing. The original Bubble Bass, the one in Pickles, serves as a villain, specifically because he's a stranger. We don't know him. We don't know why he hates SpongeBob. He shows up, lies about Pickles for petty reasons, gets exposed, and disappears. Modern Bubble Bass has a backstory now. He lives in a basement. He has a mom. He has a Wonder Whale action figure. He has a personal grudge with SpongeBob that the show keeps trying to develop. He has hobbies. He has fans. There's a whole in-universe TV segment, The Big Bad Bubble Bass, that exists inside the show to make him a celebrity in his own world. That's the Elevation Gambit. You take a character who worked precisely because he was small, and you force him to be big. You build lore around him until he stops being interesting. The damage isn't huge. Bubble Bass episodes are mostly fine, but each one of them keeps degrading a little bit off what made the original work. So much so that nowadays the mystery is practically gone. The petty meanness is gone. He's just a regular guy now, and honestly, it does get a lot worse from here. Bubble Bass is the warm-up. 2 characters this time, which coincidentally share the same problem. Doodle Bob debuted in Frankendoodle, Season 2. SpongeBob finds a magic pencil that fell from a fishing boat, draws an evil version of himself for a prank, the doodle goes on a rampage, SpongeBob eventually traps him in a notebook forever. End of episode. And here's what matters about that ending. Trapped in a notebook forever. The story closes. The threat is resolved. The magic pencil gets returned to the artist who lost it. Doodle Bob existed for 22 minutes and then he was done. Around the same time, the show did something even weirder in Graveyard Shift, a horror-tinged episode about Squidward trying to scare SpongeBob with the hash-slinging slasher. They ended the whole thing by revealing that the actual cause of all the creepy stuff was Nosferatu. You know, the 1922 silent film vampire, just standing there, flipping the light switch. The writer who came up with the cameo, Jay Lender, has said the joke was specifically that nobody under 30 would even recognize him. That was the entire bit, a deep-cut reference for the adults, a creepy, weird image for the kids. And it makes absolutely no sense in either direction. It wasn't really a setup for anything. It was a single perfect non sequitur at the end of a horror parody, made purely for catching people off guard. And then it was over. Right? Until it wasn't. In 2018 season 11, Doodle Bob came back for his own specials, Doodle Dimension, and it basically serves as a prequel to Frankendoodle. The story is that SpongeBob and Patrick get trapped in a paper dimension. Doodle Bob is there waiting, big climactic confrontation, the whole thing. Coincidentally, that same season, Nosferatu came back too. The episode is called The Night Patty, and now suddenly, he's the official night manager of the Krusty Krab? He has a job? He has co-workers? He has a backstory. And from that point on, both of them just keep coming back. Doodlebob shows up in Bottle Burglars, The Nitwitting, Captain Pipsqueak, Squidiot Box, Curse of the Weredoodle, 5 more times across 4 seasons. Nosferatu shows up in A Place for Pets, Captain Pipsqueak, Slappy Days, My Friend Patty, Funbelievable, Pet the Rock, Creepaway Camp, Biscuit Ballyhoo, The Creepy Crab, and gets his own namesake episode, Squidferatu, in 2022. He's even in Camp Coral as a child version called Kidferatu. Yeah, I can't make this up. So now both of these characters have a resume, and both of them lost the only thing that made them work, the fact that they only happened once. The original Doodlebob was unsettling, because the magic pencil was a singular event, one pencil. SpongeBob found it on a beach, used it once, and then sent it back. The whole episode is about how something uncontrolled briefly broke into the world and then got shut back out. The modern version turns that into a recurring sci-fi setup with a dimension and a portal and a Sandy invention. The original Nosferatu was funny because he didn't belong there. He was an alien element pasted into the show for 10 seconds. Now he's an employee. He punches a time card. That's what I would like to call resurrection compulsion. The instinct to drag everything back from the vault because audiences remembered it. Except the part audiences actually remembered was the fact that it didn't come back. The originals are good because they were closed loops. Meanwhile, reopening them doesn't honor the originals. It only cheapens them. Every time Doodlebob shows up in his 5th episode, the first one gets a little smaller, which is bad. But hey, it's still recoverable. If the writers ever decide to stop, Frankendoodle and Graveyard Shift still exist on the same level they always did. You can just pretend the rest of it didn't happen. And as bad as it already is, our third character isn't recoverable, to say the least. Patrick said it himself. Season 2, he doesn't have a sister. Now, look, SpongeBob is not a continuity-heavy show. Nobody's expecting Game of Thrones tier world building here. Characters change ages, jobs, addresses, voices, species sometimes. The early seasons treated canon like a suggestion, and it worked. But there's a difference between treating canon loosely and actively replacing it, and the show crossed that line when it started letting its spin-offs rewrite the original. Squidina. You probably know her from The Patrick Star Show, the spin-off where she's Patrick's adopted little sister. She runs the production of his in-universe talk show. She lives with the Star family. She's a main character. What you might not know is that Squidina actually originated in the main show, Season 11, an episode called Goons on the Moon. She shows up as one of Pearl's friends, and in this episode, she has no relation to Patrick, just a squid kid in Pearl's social circle. Even when she comes back next season in The Goofy Newbie, still Pearl's friend. After that episode, co-showrunner Vincent Waller posted publicly, "We have special plans for her." A few months later, The Patrick Star Show got announced. And in that show, Squidina was suddenly Patrick's adopted sister. And then she came back to the main show. In mid-season finale, Nitwit Neighborhood News, Cleanin' House, A Space Affair to Remember, 5-Star Restaurant, Captain Quasar, The Next Iteration, and in those appearances, she's not Pearl's friend anymore. She's part of the Star family. Cleanin' House literally has her cleaning what the episode calls the Star family kitchen. So the contamination went both ways. She was created in main canon as one thing, retconned in the spinoff as another, and then re-imported into main canon under the new identity? I'm starting to lose track here. But it's worse than that, because along with Squidina, the show imported Patrick's parents. In the original show, Patrick's parents have always been Margie and Herb Starr. They've appeared multiple times across the run. They have established designs, established voices, established personalities. In the Patrick Star Show, and now in modern main canon, Patrick's parents are Bunny and Cecil Star. Completely different names, different voice actors, different appearances, different personalities. And every time Squidina shows up in the main show now, every time the Star family gets referenced, every time Patrick interacts with his sister, the show is pretty much telling you that the version of Patrick's family you remember doesn't matter anymore. Squidina is a character whose existence is incompatible with what came before. Who gets imported into main continuity anyway? And who brings the spin-off's entire version of the world with her? And we've actually talked about this exact disease before. Different characters, same pattern. Narlene, Sandy's foot-fighting feral cousin imported in from Camp Coral. Same path, born in a spin-off. Dropped into the main show, forced everyone around her to get a little dumber to accommodate her existence. Squidina is just the more permanent version, because she didn't just bring a character, she brought a family. That's the third mistake, and unlike the first two, you can't undo it. Once Squidina is Patrick's sister aired in the main show, that's the new canon, forever. So, 3 characters, 3 different mistakes. Modern SpongeBob doesn't trust its own past enough to leave it alone. Every weird singular moment from the early seasons is now a potential franchise. Every minor character is a potential lead. Every closed loop is a potential opening. The show has so much existing material to mine that it's started cannibalizing itself, turning its best small ideas into bigger ones and losing the thing that made them work in the first place. And the worst part is, none of these are actually bad episodes individually. Doodle Dimension is fine. Moving Bubble Bass is fine. The Squidina episodes are fine. The damage isn't really about any single episode. It's in what happens cumulatively. When you spend 25 years pulling on every single thread the original show ever left behind. Maybe the best thing modern SpongeBob can do isn't add anything new. Maybe it'll let some things stay finished. Everything we just talked about today is real. But it's also not the full picture, because every once in a while, modern SpongeBob still pulls off something that quietly makes us reconsider. An episode good enough that we had to put out a whole video admitting it proved us wrong about where the show is heading. Squidward, his prankster dad, Henry Winkler, a premise that should have collapsed under itself and somehow doesn't.
How do we go from this
Home is where you're surrounded by other critters that care about you.
to this in 25 years?
Wow, your hips are so hip.
SpongeBob characters aged like kelp shake left in the sun. That's no secret. Now, if you've been around this channel, you know I've already talked about how modern SpongeBob kinda lost the plot. But this time's gonna be different. We also have to talk about the people inside it. The characters who made this show special in the first place are not the same anymore. They all morphed in their own way. And no, it's not as simple as just pointing at Patrick and saying, yeah, that guy's cooked. Because buried under all the noise, there's few characters whose arcs drift so much, it basically falls off a cliff. But before I point to that cliff, I wanted to see which character actually morphed the most. Writing choices, what got louder, what got quieter, what disappeared and added, flanderization disasters, or in rare cases, actual decent evolution. Out of everyone in Bikini Bottom, Gary's the one who's rarely seen out of character. Gary's whole deal from day one is simple. Quiet, calm, and secretly smarter than everyone in the house. And on Conch Street. Early seasons didn't give Gary a ton of dialogue. I mean, he's just meowing the entire time. But the joke is that everyone treats those meows like a full sentence.
He has such a way with words.
Sadly, we didn't get too many Gary-centric episodes either. Aside from episodes like The Great Snails Race and the one time he dumped SpongeBob for Patrick's cookies, Gary has only been shown as a side character with less than a few meows per episode. There is, however, one episode where Gary managed to speak like a wizard, but the Sleepy Time episode is basically just a dream. Now, that's not to say he had zero depth in character. Mid-era SpongeBob loves to lean into the fact that Gary also has feelings, too. They give him a few more expressions, sometimes he gets weird pupils, side-eye, raised brows, and sometimes occasional feral moments. The arc from Have You Seen This Snail had him run away, survive on his own, and get adopted by a creepy old lady. It was dramatic to say the least, and kind of a reminder that SpongeBob's pet is actually a genius who tolerates his owner's chaos. And every few episodes, they give him full spotlight. Like Gary and Spot shows him bonding with Plankton's pet Amoeba, Gary's new toy is a jealousy plotline. Wholesome stuff. It's also really nice to see Gary interact with other snails. Meanwhile, in the later season, we got the harder to watch episodes, like Pet Sitter Pad and A Pal for Gary, which is a horrendous episode. Still a Gary-centric episode, technically speaking, but mostly to showcase how much chaos he absorbs. If there's one thing those episodes manage to prove, it's that Gary is doing so much hard lifting in the house. Beneath all the harsh environment, Gary always managed to thrive using his intelligence, and somehow not even hating SpongeBob in the process. What a pet. However, Gary's biggest breakthrough is none other than the second SpongeBob movie. In Sponge on the Run, Gary becomes a mystical creature, glowing like the Chosen One. He's kidnapped by King Poseidon, who wants Gary's slime, because apparently that's the secret ingredient for staying young. Yeah, weird choice, but again, the plot just added lore into Gary's character. Though I'm not surprised. If you remember Rule of Dumb, the show already joked that Gary is actual royalty. Of course he is. All in all, Gary's character hasn't really changed. What changed is the way the show uses him. What once was a background pet now is the most important mollusk in the universe, which makes him the least morphed on the list and the most positive one. Meanwhile, our next character got mixed treatment. Upgraded, downgraded, unplugged, and rebooted more times than a Windows 95 PC. You guessed it, it's Karen. Karen is Plankton's wife, his sidekick, and honestly, the only reason the Chum Bucket still stands to this day. Alongside Sandy, Karen is easily one of the few smart creatures in Bikini Bottom. It's the first episode, Plankton, that flickers Karen's monitor to life. She's introduced as the actual brains behind all the chaos Plankton made.
Seaweed, 50% sea, 50% weed.
If it weren't for her, Plankton would just have empty mad ideas. Episodes like FUN and Algae's Always Greener proves just that. Plankton basically just pitches the wild scheme, and then Karen is the one who is actually doing the hard thinking. She even gave Plankton his Plan Z that canonically sparks the whole arc of the SpongeBob SquarePants movie from 2004. Funny enough, her delivery is the magic to her personality. Cool, calm, and just enough sass. In a world full of screamers, Karen's sarcasm cuts clean, like a perfect karate chop from Sandy. Through season 4, she's still the big screen in the wall. By the 2004 movie and season 5's Friend or Foe, mobile Karen rolls in.
Don't get worked up again, Plankton. I just mapped the floors.
Now she can actually enter scenes, drag Plankton out of trouble, or show up to collect him after yet another Krabby disaster. Episode Friend or Foe also fills in the backstory. Karen started life closer to a security system, then became the wife. It reframes the Chum Bucket as a marriage sitcom, dreamer husband, and hyper-competent wife. This would later enhance their marriage jokes like bad anniversaries, jealousy, and sometimes an actual emotional warmth. Single Cell Anniversary is the perfect example of just that. She's a cold, sarcastic robot, yes, but also capable of being affectionate.
Oh, you selfish green twit! It's our wedding anniversary!
Oh, that.
Plankton botches their big day, scrambles to make it right, and Karen lets him. It's awkward sweet. Because these two actually care. Like a real marriage where "are you cheating" lines are played both as parody and affection. Meanwhile, episodes like Karen 2.0 give us the best version of Karen. Plankton replaces her with a younger model. Old Karen gets dumped, hurt, and then builds her own solution. But when the 2.0 goes haywire, it's Karen who saves Plankton. Beat by beat, Karen always shows that she chooses the marriage, and that she's so much better than just another tool in the Chum Bucket. Unfortunately, as the years roll on, the show starts leaning on her for one thing only. Instead of a sharp-witted plotter, nowadays she's just the sidekick with the dry one-liner. This flanderization makes her a bit predictable. Plankton fails, Karen roasts, rinse and repeat. I mean, the joke still hits, but when that becomes the only gear, you lose the good stuff, and the whole "we're in this together" kinda gets thrown aside. But after the long wait, Karen finally got her big screen time. In the recent Plankton the Movie, 2025, Karen gets a villain pass, upgrades into a mech, removes her empathy chip, and tries world conquest without Plankton. Spoiler alert, it turns into a breakup to makeup arc. Plankton has to win her back, SpongeBob brokers the peace, and they reconcile with the "you were the secret formula all along" line.
The secret formula was you.
It's cute on its own, but the movie itself isn't a real masterpiece or anything. But still a good spectacle for Karen's character, especially since these days, Karen rarely gets any. In the end, Karen changed quite a lot, but the soul is still in there whenever the story gives her room, which is why she sits low on the morph chart. She's changed more than Gary, but still less than her next character, who's experienced something unique. Remember the squirrel who threw hands with clams and cried about Texas? She got crushed under the weight of her own intelligence. Sandy's first appearance, like most characters on the show, is all the way back from the first episode, Tea at the Tree Dome. Sandy's entrance is perfect. Fearless, curious, and just cool. I would say Sandy is one of the most complete characters in the show. I mean, there are a lot of strong points in Sandy's character. Where SpongeBob was naive, Squidward was bitter, Patrick was dumb, Sandy was none of that. Karate Chopper shows her playful rivalry with SpongeBob, proves that she loves to joke around with her muscles. Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm cements the tough part, telling her story to take down the Alaskan bullworm head on. Shows you that nothing is too hard when you have the brain for it. Meanwhile, the episode Texas shows her vulnerability. Like she misses Texas, she missed warmth, she missed being around people who got her. By season 1 alone, they already made a very clear foundation for a strong, independent woman. Season 2 and 3 also doubled down on her lore. Sandy gets more spotlight episodes that show her range. Episodes like Pre-Hibernation Week, where SpongeBob desperately tries to keep up with her insane endurance stunts, or Survival of the Idiots, when she hibernates, turning into a wild beast, SpongeBob and Patrick get absolutely wrecked. And Pressure, the famous debate about land versus sea creatures. Each of these had one thing in common: Sandy loves to challenge people. Sandy always had a way to push everyone to grow, whether she meant it or not. You still get flames after the first movie. Karate Island and Rodeo Days are arguably still good Sandy-centric episodes. But somewhere after the first movie, Sandy got less and less expressive. Her adventurous personality faded, her Texas charm is still there, but not as good. What's worse is that she's basically a science vending machine nowadays. She mostly just shows up in the episode when the plot needs science. Episodes involving Sandy lean on the same gag. She invents something, it malfunctions, everyone panics, or worse, she gets roped into helping chaos rather than pushing back against it. Instead of karate, rodeos, or homesickness, it's just science. And Narlene sometimes. Gosh, I hate Narlene. And by the time you hit seasons 9 and 10, it only gets worse. The dialogue flattens, the yeehaws feel like sticky notes to remind you she's Texan, and her role is just saving the day. These good old days of humanizing moments are gone. And then there's the spin-offs. Camp Coral shows Sandy as a kid genius building tree dome tech in her spare time. It's also shown that little Sandy is some secret agent for future Sandy. It's cute, I guess. But again, it reinforces the idea that she's a nerd archetype stamped into place since childhood. Well, at least she's not flanderized into oblivion yet, like some characters. Because if Sandy feels boxed in, this next character changed so much, we've forgotten that he's even a clarinet player at this point. Squidward, the failed artist and the unwilling neighbor. From the very beginning, he was the grumpy actor on chaotic Conch Street. And honestly, that's what made him special. Season 1, Squidward was deeply relatable. He hated his job, he hated noise, and he definitely hated his life. In early episodes like Squilliam Returns, they plant the big idea of Squidward as a person. He wants respect so badly, he almost self-destructs.
Mr. Krabs, let me run the restaurant for just one night. I really need to impress Squilliam.
It's a guy wrestling with failure and still wanting more. Or Artist Unknown, where he tries to be an art mentor for SpongeBob only to collapse under his own insecurity. The whole character of Petty Squidward gives us the foundation to feel with him. So many of us grew up thinking we're SpongeBob, only to realize later we are Squidward.
Well, you did it. You took my one chance at happiness and crushed it.
Which is why episodes like Band Geeks hit us so hard. They showed us his dream coming true for once. And when he won, oh, it feels so good. In fact, they hurt Squidward a little simply to keep up with his characters. Oftentimes the jokes were about Squidward getting humiliated for his selfishness and untouchable pride. Sadly, by mid-seasons, the balance leans ugly. Instead of ambition or dignity, Squidward is now defined by suffering. Every episode he's humiliated or injured or tortured simply because SpongeBob and Patrick exist near him. I mean, just look at Ink Lemonade in season 11. SpongeBob and Patrick realize they can sell Squidward's ink as lemonade, so they spend the entire episode terrifying him. My man got milked both physically and mentally. Another episode like Squidward in Clarinet Land is funny and surreal, but the takeaway is his nervous breakdown as a set piece. You start to feel the writer searching for hurt Squidward as the default spice. I don't know why. Episodes pile misery on misery until it stops being funny and just feels cruel. By season 13 alone, there are at least 5 episodes where Squidward's torment is the main dish, probably more. Squidward's morph was a tragedy to say the least, and yet his core identity is still visible, bitter and lonely buried under the screaming. That's why he ranks here. But this tragedy is nothing compared to what happened to our next character, a greedy but lovable dad figure who morphed into something cheap, and not in a good way. So Mr. Krabs has always been about money, that's not news. But early on, that greed was one slice of the pie. He was cheap, yeah, but he was also a dad, a mentor, and occasionally a lover. From Help Wanted, you get some sort of old-time shopkeeper energy vibe. He'll squeeze $1 from you.
I spent $2 whole on these boots and now I'm stuck with them.
What if I give you my Krusty Krab paycheck?
But at least he's there as a boss, barking orders, flipping patties, and handling customers when it's actually needed. And there's warmth. The episode Culture Shock is a marketing stunt and a moment he lets Pearl shine on stage.
My little girl is finally a star.
Also, look at Welcome to the Chum Bucket. He recklessly gambles SpongeBob away, which is a classic Krabs move, but when Plankton actually wins, he realizes what he's actually lost and shows genuine heartbreak for SpongeBob. He even wins SpongeBob back later with a song about their bond. And then the smoking peanut quietly flips the switch.
What's wrong with Clamu?
Here's the real criminal. Behold!
He raids the zoo on It's Free Day. Bulbs, soda, balloons, typical Krabs scrounge. But when Clamu starts crying, Bikini Bottom panics. SpongeBob blames himself for tossing a peanut and confesses, only for the episode to reveal that Krabs stole Clamu's pearl, an egg. After that, the schemes turn worse and worse into something predatory. Krabs would later abuse jellyfish jelly, stripping jellyfish fields, milking them via factory tubes, tossing bodies for profits. And don't even mention the deliberate crime of Nasty Patty. Of course, things didn't get better over time. The later seasons don't ask if he'll go too far, they ask how far he'll go this week.
If you had to choose between SpongeBob and all the money I have in my pocket, which would you take?
How much money are we talking about?
62 cents.
I'll take the money.
Mr. Krabs!
In Born Again Krabs, he literally sells SpongeBob's soul over a dime. That was season 3, and even then it felt extreme. But at least the episode punished him, and he realizes his mistake. Well, not really, actually.
But how could you trade SpongeBob for 62 cents?
You think I could have gotten more?
Meanwhile, if you put those 62 cents jokes in modern seasons, it's just a regular joke.
Oh, nothing's too good for me, daughter.
But at least his role as an awkward father for Pearl didn't change that much. There are some modern episodes about the relationship, still not as good though. I think Krabs is one of the worst characters that suffers from Flanderization. Every decision, every gag, every line is about money. It's gotten so flat that in newer episodes, 90% of Krabs' appearances are about him exploiting something for profit. And honestly, it feels less like satire now and more about documentary. Where's the guy who, in Krusty Krab training video, wanted his restaurant to be respected? Where's the wise father who guided SpongeBob? Buried under stacks of cash. And that right there lands him here on the list. Worse than Squidward, but not as catastrophic as the chaos waiting further down the list. Because as bad as Mr. Krabs' Flanderization goes, some characters turned into something way worse. But before we tackle some real apocalypse, let's check in on his old friend across the street. The one that is always defined by failures and small. Plankton is Bikini Bottom's smallest villain with the loudest plans. And when I said loud, it's because most of his plans didn't even get half success. But he didn't start as a one-note screamer. He began as a clever, petty, and way too ambitious for one eye microbe. His first appearance is literally an episode called Plankton. He's introduced as a tiny mastermind who tries tricking SpongeBob for the formula. The joke is that he's dangerous because he's smart. Then the episode FUN flips the script. SpongeBob decides Plankton isn't evil, he's just a sad, lonely guy. For a few minutes, their friendship actually works, until Plankton's mask slips. It's our first proper look at his true color. Needy, performative, and under it all, insecure.
You can have anything you want with a little training. You just have to learn to be more assertive.
The episode Walking Small pushes that angle further. He manipulates SpongeBob into clearing a beach so he can build a chum bucket annex. But more than anything, Plankton shows a desperate urge to matter, to be feared by people. I personally like the introduction of the Plankton character. For one, he's a different villain than what Mermaid Man fights. Instead of trying to rule the city by superhuman strengths and magic, Plankton actually comes up with a more subtle plan to rule by monopolizing the food market. And two is that he's one of the few characters who gets a real arc to his past. The special friend or foe episode retcons his longtime rivalry with Krabs into a nuclear, that they were best pals who split over the Krabby Patty formula. It reframes Plankton's real obsession as personal.
This plan Z can't possibly fail!
And in the 2004 movie, he actually wins big time via Plan Z. He steals the formula and slaves Bikini Bottom with bucket helmets, and nearly gets away with it. It's his peak as an actual threat before the reset. Plankton's character is one of the most constant depictions in the early seasons. Every time there's chaos and massive destruction in Bikini Bottom, Plankton is the first person in suspicion. There are little windows where the show lets him be competent without mind control. Episodes like Chum Fricassee and Greasy Buffoons give him some credit to his intelligence. He has many ways to fight Krabs, and an entertaining one too. But then we hit the bad era. The humiliation loop for Plankton. One-course meal crystallizes it. Krabs discovers Plankton is terrified of whales and terrorizes him for an entire episode. It goes beyond rivalry into mean-spirited misery, even goes as far as saying offing himself as a joke. Another one like A Taste of Plankton is just a weird fetish. Like I said before in Karen's character, from here on the pattern is solid. Plankton scheming, goes fail, Karen roast, and reset. His motivation stayed the same most of the time. It's just that he's become louder, flatter, and humiliated every time. There's no more lonely genius, manipulative but layered, or personal feud with Krabs. Well, Krabs might be the only one relieved by these changes since Plankton is his nemesis, but sadly the same fate inevitably comes for his loved ones too. Krabs might survive the moral slide, but Pearl? She wears the fallout. Pearl starts as a dramatic, moody, spoiled teen and the center of Krabs' heart. Her first real spotlight in The Chaperone nails it. Krabs panics because a boy bails on Pearl's prom, SpongeBob fills in, and Pearl goes from mortified to genuinely having a good night. This episode gives us the impression that Pearl's happiness is everything for Krabs, no matter the cost. Then Bossy Boots shows she's got some guts. She swings through the Krusty Krab like a teen CEO, rebrands it into the Cuddly Krab, and bulldozes her dad's taste with glitter and heartprint uniforms. It's funny, but it also states loudly that Pearl has opinions, and Krabs, kind of, respects them, until it gets too expensive. Meanwhile, episodes like Whale of a Birthday solidifies her emotional blueprint with her father. She doesn't want Krabs to cheap out like last year's party, so Krabs tries to do things right by overspending on everything. After all, she's just a kid who wants to feel seen.
Oh, Daddy, You got me everything I wanted.
Oh, nothing's too good for me, daughter.
As the seasons roll on, Pearl's story time shrinks. You still get blips, like the slumber party as pure Krabs panic and Pearl hosts a girls' night as he hires SpongeBob as security. It's loud, but the center is still dad versus teen independence. And Pearl wins that tug-of-war by sheer personality.
I would like to apply for a job, please.
Later season episodes like Mall Girl Pearl tries to refocus her character as an aimless teen, drifting through the mall, trying to figure out where she fits. It could have been a great What Do I Want to Do episode, but it mostly parks her in a gag loop. Awkward interviews, retail bits, and reset. Between those timelines, Pearl gets tossed aside as a side character with less depth too. Either it's a walk-on scene to roll her eyes at Krabs, or one-liners about fashion or embarrassment, or a whale-sized reaction shot, and we're out. The dad-daughter warmth that used to anchor Krabs, it shows up way less. To be fair, it's not gone entirely, just thin. So yeah, Pearl's morph is more of a shrink and flatten, but the biggest disappointment is that her character becomes more and more quiet. On the other hand, our next chapter is the exact opposite, one that is defined by the word loud. You can't make this list without the Sponge himself. From day one, he is a bright and optimistic guy. That's the Spine. He's always desperate to do right by the people he loves. Just like ripped pants, the joke starts as confidence and curdles into cringe. He pushes the bit too far, blows the room, and sings his way back to honesty. It's silly and human. Pizza delivery is another great showcase of his optimism versus the world's indifference. He treats the pizza delivery job like a quest, protects the pizza, and even when a jerk customer breaks him, he doesn't hate him. He just cries. Early canon even labels him clearly, a kid brain trying to do adult things with heart. Then the show crosses season 6 and the dials shift. Episodes like The Splinter swap layered comedy for hyper-detailed discomfort. The jokes got disgusting and the camera holds on the wound like that's the punchline. I don't know why they love these gross-out jokes, man. But these gross-out jokes are nothing in comparison to the apathetic jokes in the later session. In season 7, A Pal for Gary, SpongeBob buys a friend that literally attacks Gary, and he doesn't see it. The old Sponge would notice something like this. Meanwhile, this one is oblivious to harm happening a foot away. It's one of the clearest signs that characters' empathy got dialed down. Stuck in the Ringer, season 7 pushes the same problem. Louder faces, thinner truth. He's glued into a torture device for 11 minutes and the arc is mostly shrieking. There's just pain as a metronome. By face freeze in season 8, the joke is the face. The plot is nothing more than an excuse for thumbnails. I mean, just look at that. And don't even get me started with whirly brains or nitwitting. Again, to be fair, the spirit isn't gone. Every so often the machine remembers the recipe. The Fish Called Sandy is a great example. The show slows down, lets the character POV lead, and even uses the old line style again. SpongeBob gets to be a supportive weirdo again instead of just being obnoxious. But still, those breaths are rarer than they should be. Nowadays it just feels like a brand mascot, emotions as toggles, jokes in service of volume. It's not a total rewrite, technically, he's still the fry cook angel who loves his friends, but the ratio flipped. That's a big morph for a character and somehow, not the biggest. Our next character, however, didn't just get a big morph over the past years, he also got a big body. And when he got big, he got dangerous. Early Patrick is the safest place in the show. Dumb? Definitely. But sweet dumb, loyal, and accidentally wise. Big Pink Loser is Patrick in a nutshell. He wants a trophy so badly he clones SpongeBob's life. It's pathetic and adorable. And the ending lands a real beat. Be yourself. He gets a trophy for doing nothing and learns the right lesson by accident. In Idiot Box, Patrick and SpongeBob generate Dolby-level sound effects from a cardboard box. The joke is that their imagination is so vivid, it becomes real and, hilariously, not for Squidward. Meanwhile, Patrick Smartpants flips the formula. He gets smart after an accident, becomes kind and cultured, and loses SpongeBob in the process. But the kicker is that he chooses dumbness back, because friendship is more important than knowledge. Early Patrick is truly an enigma.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
You could get every single kind of emotion from him, but if there's anything that never changes from his character, it's that he was innocent. Anything he does, whether it's good, bad, painful, or even genius, it's simply because he doesn't know it better. He only knows one thing, and he will do that thing only. He was anything but mean. The moment he realized that he's hurting someone, especially SpongeBob, he would instantly stop. Unfortunately, somewhere along the line, Patrick is dumb got mistranslated into Patrick is an asshole. Episodes like Yours, Mine, and Mine give Patrick a selfish character. He hijacks a kid's meal toy SpongeBob bought for both of them, plus SpongeBob's food, plus SpongeBob's patience. I mean, he's taking everything. Another example like the card is pure oblivion. SpongeBob treats a rare Mermaid Man card like a holy relic, and yet Patrick ruins it by borrowing it. Old Patrick would feel bad. Meanwhile, this one winks and shrugs. But before we go too far into accusing Patrick, this mean-spirited trait already shown as early as Season 2, I'm with stupid. In order to look smart in front of his parents, Patrick steamrolls SpongeBob as an act. It's just that somewhere along the way, he forgot that this was staged, and hit right where it hurts the most. So yeah, you could say that these changes were foreshadowed since the early episodes. But it is still a shame, because episodes like Pet Sitter Pat is where a lot of fans tapped out. You know, the one where Patrick watches Gary and neglects him into a near-death experience? I mean, the joke is the neglect. Meanwhile, the recent Pet the Rock episode turns him unhinged. Face contortions, random violence, zero empathy, just hitting everybody in the park with a whoops. You can still find flashes of the old starfish. Calmer episodes, quieter B-plots, but the median Patrick is a wrecking ball. It's really a massive morph, big enough for second place, which leaves only one character to be the one who morphed the most in the show, which is sadly one of the most tragic stories in Bikini Bottom or in boating school. Yep, it's not SpongeBob the main character, it's Mrs. Puff. From day one, she's had a steady place in the show, professional, supportive, and almost maternal with her students. Her debut in Season 1 made a very clear picture of her. The joke is that she's living the life of a miserable teacher, as most real teachers do, sadly. Problematic kids, boring classes, bullying in the boating school. But she keeps showing up anyway. Early Puff lives in the classroom dynamics. She sighs a lot, puffs up when stressed, but the center is educator energy. I will get this child through a turn signal if it kills me. She's taking the role seriously. She will so often take the blame for the chaos her students make.
You know this guy?
Of course I do. I'm the one who gave him the uniform in the first place. He's my responsibility.
Then we get her first real change in No Free Rides. Exhausted as she is, she passes SpongeBob from the exam just to be rid of him. Then spends the whole episode trying to steal his boat back because she knows he'll destroy the town. It's funny, and it's the moment her ethics start bending under pressure. Doing time keeps bringing this idea to the table. After another catastrophe, Mrs. Puff goes to jail. SpongeBob and Patrick try to bust her out, and it becomes a prison break farce. But the subtext is clear. This job is ruining her life. Meanwhile, the world outside treats her like a real person. Krusty Love shows a shy, flattered Mrs. Puff as Krabs falls head over claws. It shows that beyond teaching life, she has a romantic life as a woman. But somewhere by Season 4, the plot breaks entirely. Mrs. Puff, You're Fired makes her a scapegoat for SpongeBob's record. She's replaced by a stricter instructor, a satire of how institutions punish frontline teachers for impossible students. It's a broad topic, but the story point is sharp. They took her job, not the problem. Then episode Summer Job in Season 7 rubs salt in it. After she causes damage, she has to work at the Krusty Krab beside SpongeBob to pay it off. Just like Squidward, her regular gag is misery. The story of a teacher trapped in perpetual debt to her own students' chaos.
I can't wait to pass my next student.
Hello, Mrs. Puff. Mrs. Puff?
Bumper to Bumper gives her one last honest attempt. New methods, renewed hope. SpongeBob walks in and she still falls to pieces. It's a perfect visual for a character whose nervous system is permanently fried. And finally, the episode that blew up everyone's mind, Demolition Doofus. After a brutal crash, a doctor tells her she can't puff anymore. So she enters SpongeBob into a demolition derby anyway. The episode leans into her wanting him to get hurt so he'll stop driving. I think the idea is to play it as a dark comedy, but clearly her character is so far gone from a sane person. This is where many fans mark the line between long-suffering teacher and psychopath. I mean, the whole fan theory about Mrs. Puffs as a blatant criminal didn't come from nothing. There are too many signs and proof that she was no longer just a miserable teacher. Old Mrs. Puff is a competent, caring instructor trying to do right by a chaotic kid. Nowadays, she's just a burnt-out punchline, rules bent to be broken, and hating SpongeBob with every scale on her body. Which is understandable, sadly. It's the steepest slide in Bikini Bottom simply because she lost herself. So yeah, that's the whole morphing story. From a snail who barely budged to a teacher who lost herself one crash at a time. If you've watched this far, you already know the pattern. When a character stays a person, the jokes land deeper. When a character turns into a prop, the volume goes up and the feeling goes out. It's just sad to see the characters morphed this much, especially when we all remember just how good the early seasons are. Those episodes could feel like a kids show and a mystery for adults at the same time. You might be surprised by what your favorite character says about you. I mean, this is definitely not a scientific personality test, but the thing is that we've been watching SpongeBob our whole lives. This show basically defined a whole generation's humor and meme culture. We absorbed the humor like the yellow sponge himself, and that's exactly why I made this video. Your favorite character could easily explain how you enjoy SpongeBob as a show just because how much we mirror their individual jokes. However, considering the number of unique characters in Bikini Bottom, I just know this list is going to become unhinged. Some of you will have boring, normal picks. Meanwhile, some of you are likely to favor the more obscure characters in the show, which might explain some obscure stuff about you, too. If SpongeBob is your favorite, then congratulations for joining the majority of the fans here. It also means you're optimistic, caring, and kind to those around you. Truly a man of the people. Just kidding. What it really means is that you're a stubborn and energetic person. And yeah, you're likely to be a man of many talents as well. Frying burgers, jellyfishing, karate, maybe even some bubble blowing. But let's keep it real. Your kindness comes with side effects. Because you're so unapologetically kind and caring for others to the point that people will be dependent on you. Or see you as the obnoxiously loud one who loves to interfere with people's affairs. Still, no matter how people see you, you already make up for it. In fact, you might enjoy watching SpongeBob as a reminder that being kind is not a weakness. It's a skill that most people fail at on a daily basis. What I really mean is, you're living for the whole ride, guys. Whether it's a dreadful 12-hour shift on a rainy day, or the best day of your life, you're ready to have fun and to make sure everyone else is too.
I'm ready! I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready.
Or you're none of that, and you just love SpongeBob because he is the person you always aspire to be but never could, which is tragic, but also relatable, so you're welcome. But here's the thing, you don't have to be eternally happy like SpongeBob to enjoy life. Sometimes you can be happy just by caring less and less like Patrick. Patrick fans, you guys love surprises. That's not even a secret. And what better way to be surprised than to expect absolutely nothing?
That makes sense to me.
It also means you like SpongeBob best when it feels unpredictable. The weirder the episode gets, the more funny you find it. You might be considered the best mates to hang out with. Zero shame for being weird, and somehow you make life feel less serious just by existing. That's why even when you're a menace, people still invite you out. The only warning I could give you is that if Patrick is your favorite in a hardcore way, you might be attracted to chaos more than you'd like to admit. Like, maybe you don't want a purely peaceful life, you want peace with a little bit of property damage here and there. If anything, friendship is always more important than knowledge as far as you're concerned. Well, as long as you're not being a jerk like Season 8 Patrick, then we gotta talk. But maybe you're not the type who thinks life always has to be happy. Maybe you prefer it with a little misery to spice things up. If that's the case, then look no further than Squidward Q Tentacles. Squidward is the bitter adult life that, unfortunately, we're all too familiar with. Most of us can feel Squidward's pain to some extent, which is why I don't think most of us favored Squidward as a kid. When you're young, Squidward just looks like a hater. In contrast to the rest of the neighbors on Conch Street, he's more pessimistic and cynical than you'd like to admit. That said, in moderation, that could be a healthier way of life. Every chaotic friend group needs a Squidward to keep them in check. And don't get me wrong, Squidward has had an enormous number of brilliant lines since day one. You could love him purely for the sarcasm alone.
I'll burn it and let it swim.
We serve food here, sir.
But I'm willing to bet most of you started appreciating Squidward more the older you got. Like, you start to understand his pain, how unfair the reality is for him sometimes, and how easy it is to become like him if you put yourself in his tentacles. And that results in this weird, relatable friend bond, you know? Like, I get why you're thinking like that, therefore, you're my guy.
Too bad that didn't kill me.
At least, that's what it feels like to me. Then again, you might like him because you're just a cynical mind that loves to hang around a bunch of crazy-ass friends. You like being the straight man in a clown universe. It's a lifestyle, after all. Also, even if Squidward pretends he has no soul left, at the end of the day, he still sticks up for people when it counts, which is a pretty noble thing to do. But if you think the life of Squidward is already depressing, then you don't even know the half of it. Just take a look at the life of Mrs. Puff. If Mrs. Puff is your favorite, then I'm kind of concerned for you, not gonna lie. I'm not saying you need help now, it's just that her whole character is a very weird mix of patience and panic.
SpongeBob!
So, if she's your favorite, you might be constantly stressed out in life. But at the same time, you're not really avoiding the source of your stress because you think you could still change it. Does that sound like you're stuck in a toxic relationship? Anyway, if anything, you know very well how to laugh through the stress. You're pretty darn determined. You're always willing to help others out, and you take your job very seriously. Fortunately for you, you guys are very familiar with the concept of survival, since you're on edge most of the time. So yeah, Mrs. Puff fans, it might be good to seek some help from others before you, too, become Mrs. Puff. But as bad as her life sounds, morally speaking, being Mrs. Puff is still better than being the source of other people's misery, like Eugene Krabs. Let's be real. If your favorite character is Mr. Krabs, then everything could be summed up in one sentence.
Hello, I like money.
When it comes to Krabs, I think it's kind of a love him or absolutely hate him situation. He's a cheap old man, however you look at him, and depending on the weather, he might let you loose after only squeezing a few dollars from your pocket. However, that doesn't make him a straight-up evil person, in my opinion. As nasty as Krabs' business practices can be, he's still willing to guide some young souls, like SpongeBob and Squidward, to be better people, as long as it doesn't cost him anything in the process. But hey, maybe it just means you're a good businessman like Krabs is. You know where the money is and how to move it to your pocket. To some extent, you're an opportunist. More than anything, there's a strong chance that you're a family-oriented person. After all, there's no better treasure than a good family. So if you're a fan of Mr. Krabs, you've probably got a dark sense of humor. You enjoy SpongeBob as satire more than just silly stories. You want the show to roast how messed up the real world is, especially when it comes to work culture. You're a proper working adult, right? And just like any normal adult in real life, who doesn't love a bit of rivalry to spice up your life? Someone like Plankton is a must to have in your friend circle to keep pushing you forward. Diabolical and genius. That's who you are. If Plankton is your favorite, you probably have a soft spot for losers with ambition. Because Plankton is a villain, yes, but he's also the underdog who refuses to stop playing the game. He's surprisingly a pretty consistent character, still the same tiny man yelling at the universe season after season. That sheer persistence alone is enough reason to choose Plankton as your favorite character. It also means you don't watch SpongeBob just to see Krabs win over and over again. You watch it for the love of the rivalry and the comedy of someone being intelligent enough to build death machines, but not intelligent enough to develop a taste bud. However, you might want to watch how far you're mirroring Plankton in real life. Definitely don't become the edgy genius who thinks the world just misunderstands you. But, it's just a phase. You'll grow out of it. And if there's anything Plankton's story proves, it's that a match made in heaven is real, because he found Karen. Okay, first of all, he didn't meet Karen like a normal person. He fell in love with CCTV Karen before she was even Karen. Yes, Plankton is a freak, we know. So if Karen is your favorite, you're probably the only adult in the room type, but with a spine and a sense of humor. On second thought, I don't really know what to say about you Karen fans out there. You guys might actually be tech-savvy people. You like tinkering with computers and stuff enough to appreciate all the tech jokes. Or if you're a married woman, then you probably have a childish husband like Plankton. And girls, do you love to call out your man day in and day out for it? Because you really just enjoy being dry, sarcastic support characters for your man, even though it's you who secretly carries the whole operation. Or you could be a feminist, since Plankton doesn't really treat Karen with the respect she deserves. I don't know. Speaking of which, do you know who's also a dynamic duo in an awkward relationship? Yes, our senile superheroes, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. You really can't have one without the other. Mermaid Man is borderline senile, forgetful, and somehow still ambitious enough to fight evil, whereas Barnacle Boy is a bit more straightforward and old school, and just wants to enjoy his retirement in peace, and be respected as an adult, of course.
How is that adult-sized Krabby Patty treating you, Barnacle Man?
If these guys are your favorite, you're not alone. The moment they show up, you just know it's going to be a good episode. You might like them because you enjoy superhero comics in general, like Marvel. So you love SpongeBob's parody, or you might just genuinely like old people.
Old people are the greatest. They're full of wisdom and experience.
Or perhaps you're just the older guy in your friend group. You don't need to be in every hangout to be appreciated. Just gotta join the kids and spit out some wisdom once in a while, right? There are no really bad traits from you guys, except from maybe the back pain and some of your gray hair. Also, real respect to their voice actors. May both of these legends, Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway, rest in peace. Up next is a really, really interesting character to say the least. Bubble Bass. Honestly, Bubble Bass is absurdly memorable for a side character, especially because of the Pickles debut.
Look! He's been hiding the pickles under his tongue the whole time!
And there's the pickles from last time, too!
Bubble Bass fans enjoy some good satire, for sure. You like SpongeBob when it's roasting annoying customers, neckbeards, and that specific type of person. We deal with irritating people all the time, and sometimes you just gotta vent about it. Sadly, he literally only appeared in 3 episodes in season 1, then straight up disappeared from the show before making a comeback like nothing happened and became Squidward's new best friend. We can thank modern seasons for making him weirdly frequent. So if you like Bubble Bass, you probably appreciate the Bikini Bottom NPC world building too. The idea that the town has recurring weirdos. But maybe you're that person too. A long-lost childhood friend who was just catching up and now is back to become best friends again. Good for you. Speaking of making a comeback, that reminds me of another person with a similar Squilliam Fancyson. A man of finer taste indeed, which is something rare in this city. Squilliam is a handsome, rich, talented artist blessed with a muscular body. He's just that perfect. And depending on how much you believe the SpongeBob conspiracy, he might just be Squidward's long-lost cousin. So does that make you perfect too if you're a fan of Squilliam? No. It actually means you're a jerk who loves to flex your success in front of an underpaid fast food cashier, and you find joy in stepping on others even more than you love your own eyebrow. In other words, screw you. Just kidding. You guys just love rivalry banter, that's all. Now, I think after some safe picks here, we're stepping into the trickier ones. which coincidentally, both are the rare mammals in Bikini Bottom, one of them being the biggest mystery in the 7 seas, pearl crabs. Similar to Bubble Bass, I don't think she has a big fan base, but Pearl nonetheless has her own cult following just like anyone else. If Pearl is your favorite, you probably relate to one of two realities. Either you were a spoiled child, or you had a parent who cared more about money than you. Depending on which era of SpongeBob we're talking about, Pearl can be sweet, bratty, insecure, or just a walking reminder that Mr. Krabs is somehow still a role model as a single father. In any case, you're a confident person who knows exactly what you want and when you want it. I can only hope you're not the bratty teenager she is in the modern seasons. You also enjoy SpongeBob when it dips into family dynamics, and not everything has to be a Krusty Krab plot. Or maybe you just like her for the mysteries. Well, I don't blame you. Pearl has brought us some of the biggest cases to solve as far as this channel goes, which, weirdly enough, could also be said about the next mammal on this list, Sandy Cheeks. Right off the bat, she's the smartest and toughest critter in Bikini Bottom. Sandy is probably your favorite because you love power. Brain power, muscle power, money power, anything. Or maybe you're just a fellow Texan rooting for the homegirl. At the very least, you enjoy SpongeBob most when it feels like an adventure. Training arcs, science nonsense, karate competitions, all sorts of stuff. Be it an over-energetic sponge or massive Alaskan bullworms, you don't take kindly to people who keep you from your goals. You do, however, take kindly to the ones who support you. There's nobody better to have as a friend, and nobody more terrifying to have as an enemy. In short, you're just built differently. But while you may be the strongest critter in Bikini Bottom, you're not the only one who can do some heavy lifting. Enter Larry the Lobster. You're just a gym bro, don't lie. You're a bit more level-headed than Sandy. Instead of, I must prove myself, you're more like, I'm just trying to enjoy my life and look good doing it. You just want to lift some weights and have a good time. You love being surrounded by the boys at the beach, doing whatever stuff you find fancy. Mostly competitive sports though. Self-gratification comes first for you. You live by your own set of rules, and there's no better person than you when it comes to living your life to the fullest. In fact, maybe live like Larry is your mantra in real life as well, which means you're either thriving or you're one minor inconvenience from becoming Squidward. There's no in between. Speaking of mantras, for those who love to curse others more than you like to admit, you might like The Flying Dutchman. Let me guess. Your favorite movie genre is horror, your favorite holiday is Halloween, and your favorite SpongeBob episode is Shanghai. Yeah, you guys love supernatural things in this show. I mean, it's always a treat to have a Flying Dutchman in the show. There's just this unparalleled force of magic we never get to see from any other character in the show, which might just make him the strongest character aside from Neptune. You also have an eye for unique aesthetics, because the Dutchman has by far one of the coolest character designs in SpongeBob. And I'm willing to bet you might also have a favorite sock. Just make sure to wash it regularly and not have the hygiene of a pirate, okay? Because as weird as this might sound, even a mollusk like Gary has better hygiene than you. Oh, if you love Gary, then you're a simple person. You're a pet person. And what it says about you as a viewer is actually really wholesome. You enjoy SpongeBob when it shows unconditional affection. No matter how nasty and troublesome your pets are, you're always going to find a reason to dote on them. Although, if you've liked Gary since the old days, you might just be eager enough to train your pet to be as knowledgeable as Gary. But one thing's for sure, you have impeccable taste and have chosen the cutest character in the show. While every other character in the series has some flaws, Gary is just perfect. And for this reason, both he and his fans reign supreme. There's a reason he's the rightful king of Bikini Bottom, after all. Now, before we get to possibly the best character in the show, I have to shout out the honorable mentions, because I know some of you are built differently, and your favorite character is some random civilian who appears for 7 seconds and steals the whole episode. If you love SpongeBob, then you also have a soft spot for his pencil demon counterpart, too. You just love chaos. Evil chaos, to be precise. Also, you probably have an inner voice that wants to fight a better version of you out of pure jealousy. Respectfully, that's insane. Whereas if you like Fred, then you either love the running gag or you have a recurring injury in your knees. But hey, your best trait is that you don't let the injury stop you. Because unlike SpongeBob, who refuses to go outside after shattering his bum, you always find a way to keep working to provide for your family, which makes you a real man. Or woman. Bubble Buddy fans are just endearing people. That's it. He's a cute bubble, he's a good buddy. Yeah, what's not to like? And what it says about you as a viewer is pretty simple. You like sweetness that shows up at the right moment. You're more reserved, you don't talk too much, but whenever your friends need you, they can always count on you. Another dynamic duo from Bikini Bottom, the eternal rival to Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, which makes them equally senior characters in the show. Man Ray fans, listen. Man Ray is iconic, okay? But if he's your favorite, well, I'm afraid you're just evil if you like them that much. You love to harass teenagers, you've got anger issues, and you probably want to watch the world burn. That's it for our honorable mentions, and I can't wait any longer to tell you my favorite character, objectively, is the best character in Bikini Bottom. And if the fact that I made him the profile picture for this channel isn't obvious enough, it's Tom. Oh my god, where do I even start? He has an iron bum, he has some serious anger issues, and of course, the best of all, Tom loves chocolate as much as I do.
Chocolate!
For a character that counts as incidental, it's insane how many memorable crash-out moments he gave us in the first 3 seasons alone. Tom is basically proof that SpongeBob's world building is cracked. Any background character could steal the spotlight at any time. I mean, come on, he's just the best, without question. So if Tom's your favorite character, just like me, that means you're a person of refined taste. You appreciate classic memes, classic quotes, and the kind of SpongeBob humor that feels timeless instead of era-dependent. Which honestly, there's no better way to enjoy SpongeBob than that. So, now that we're at the end, I want to throw it back to you. Who's your favorite SpongeBob character? And has it changed as you got older? Because if you used to be a SpongeBob kid, but you're slowly turning into a Squidward adult, welcome to the club. Rent's due on the 1st. Everyone remembers the sweet victory performance. Even if you haven't watched Band Geeks in years, that Bubble Bowl moment lives rent-free in our heads. It's just one of those core childhood memories. It's the Squidward episode. But as much as people love to talk about the Bubble Bowl, it's not actually the moment that made everyone fall in love with Squidward. The moment that actually made everyone fall in love with him happens way before the performance. The scene itself is easily overlooked, since the episode doesn't add slow motion or zoom into his face to make it dramatic. But for a character who usually exists just to be the punchline, that scene hits in a way that SpongeBob almost never does. Band Geek starts the exact same way every Squidward episode does. He's at home, minding his own business, proudly playing clarinet, badly. And then the universe decides to ruin his day. Squilliam Fancyson, Squidward's version of your rich cousin who won't stop bragging, calls him just to go, "Hey buddy, remember band class? Yeah, I got famous now. What are you doing, loser?"
I'm the leader of a big fancy band now.
Then he says he's going to perform at the Bubble Bowl, the Super Bowl of this universe. But then he asks Squidward to perform in his place, since he's so busy at being successful. What a jerk. Because the thing is, I'm sure Squilliam knows exactly what he's doing. He knows Squidward doesn't have a band. He knows Squidward hasn't accomplished anything close to this. That means he calls specifically to watch him fail on the big stage. It's basically a setup. And Squidward, being the desperate performer, falls for it instantly. He panics, he lies. He said that, of course he has a band, and they're definitely up to the task, and it's gonna be amazing. But sadly, before Squidward even knows what he's doing, he's already out on the street trying to make his lie real. He puts up flyers to form a band, he plans to drag every breathing organism in the town into this disaster. And he instantly regrets the decision. No one can play. Half of them don't even know what an instrument is.
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
And Squidward, who has waited his entire life for a musical breakthrough, suddenly becomes a babysitter for the most chaotic group in Bikini Bottom. Obviously, practice days go downhill in seconds. The two flag twirlers launch themselves into a blimp. Plankton picks the worst instrument possible for himself, the harmonica. Patrick and Sandy with their trumpet violence. As for Squidward, he just sinks further into despair. Until finally, after 4 days of disaster, tensions snap. The band erupts into a free-for-all brawl. People insulting each other, instruments breaking, Sandy chasing Patrick with a trumpet. Again, it's the whole fight. Funny and chaotic at the same time, but the moment it stops being funny is the moment they all walk out.
Hey, class is over.
Turns out, no one ever takes this band seriously. They all treat this practice like it was just some sort of after-class hobby or something, and not preparing for a grand finale performance. That's where our main man Squidward breaks and gives us this very scene.
Well, you did it. You took my one chance at happiness and crushed it. Don't bother showing up tomorrow.
He looks the whole band in the eyes and finally says what he's been feeling for years. It's the moment the audience realizes, oh, maybe Squidward's not miserable because he hates everything. Maybe he's just never had a win. Up until this episode, or should I say the first 3 seasons, Squidward was always the joke. He's the boring adult in the neighborhood, the guy whose whole personality is being tired of everyone else's nonsense. A lot of people would consider him the buzzkill, as if he never knows how to have fun or let someone else have the fun without him. And honestly, that is very understandable, considering the show trained us not to take him seriously. When SpongeBob does his job properly, Squidward gets over-suspicious. When SpongeBob and Patrick try to play in the backyard, Squidward wants to ruin their friendship. And whenever there's a stage, Squidward tries to make sure he's the one under the spotlights. Squidward, at his core, is written as the buzzkill who thinks he's better than everyone, instead of someone truly chasing his ambition. And the show usually punishes him for it. He wants to pull a mean prank, he gets humbled pretty quickly. He wants recognition, he gets embarrassed. He wants solitude, he gets nihilism instead. After watching all those episodes, we get this impression. He will fail by the 10th minute, because that's the formula, and he deserved it. It's the final punchline, reserved for Squidward exclusively for being a snob. So when Band Geeks begins, we are so ready for that usual cycle. Squidward lies to impress Squilliam, Bikini Bottom turns on him, he gets humiliated in front of everyone, we laugh, episode ends. But Band Geeks prepares one big surprise for us. The writers made Squidward admit his defeat even before he got humiliated.
I really had expected better of you people. I guess I'm a loser for that too.
He even felt wrong for trying to believe that, for once, he could do something meaningful. I mean, Squidward is just tired at this point. Why even bother trying? It's raw, it's vulnerable, and because this is SpongeBob, the scene lasts like 10 seconds, with Patrick stepping over it.
You're welcome.
And yet, it's enough to turn the tide. It changes how you see Squidward for the entire episode. Honestly, for the entire show. After he leaves, the episode does something genius. It hands the story to SpongeBob. He looks around the room, broken instruments, bruised egos, and debris everywhere. But instead of laughing like he normally would, he goes,
"What kind of monsters are we? That poor creature came to us in his hour of need, and we failed him."
Even us, the audience, feels called out by that. What kind of monster are we to expect Squidward to fail again, just so we could laugh at him? And I'll be honest, SpongeBob, or everyone, has every reason to shrug this off. After all, Squidward lied his way into this whole mess in the first place. There's no real obligation to meet the expectation of a Bubble Bowl halftime performer. But SpongeBob doesn't care about any of that, simply because he understands something the audience finally sees too. Squidward genuinely needed help, and he decides Squidward deserves a win. He uses examples that anyone, even a kid, could understand.
We could all pull together and discover what it truly means to be in a marching band.
It might sound absurd at first, I know, but his words bear a powerful message. He believes everyone deserves kindness, especially the people who don't know how to ask for it. All you have to do is pretend they've done something good for you to make it easier. And the best part? Bikini Bottom listens. the entire town, the same people who just tried to beat each other with trombones, rallies behind one goal. Let's make Squidward proud. And that right there is the real emotional string of Band Geeks. It's the idea that the entire community of Bikini Bottom chooses to give Squidward his deserved happiness, simply because they finally see how much it means to him. Without this moment, without Squidward ever admitting his defeat, Sweet Victory wouldn't feel sweet at all. But with it, it became one of the most unforgettable moments in cartoon history. This freeze frame jump right here, it's the single happiest moment Squidward ever gets in the entire series. And the writers give it to us because they know we'd secretly been rooting for Squidward this whole time. But I have to point something out that almost nobody ever talks about. The plot for Band Geeks isn't really written like a normal SpongeBob episode. If I had to make a comparison, it's written more similarly to an underdog sports movie. You've got an impossible goal from the get-go, a completely disastrous team, the failure montage full of strong characters, the emotional collapse, and then the big comeback at the last minute. It's the go-to plot of every inspiring sports film ever, except instead of a football team, it's Bikini Bottom civilians who don't know what an instrument is. If Band Geeks was structured like a normal SpongeBob story, the townspeople would have walked out at the end, with Squidward hitting the pavement at the Bubble Bowl and Squilliam having the last laugh, then roll credits. But instead, the writers build an entire emotional arc around Squidward, the kind they never give to him. And this leads into the second thing that people don't talk about, why adults, specifically, love this episode so much. When Squidward says, "You took my one chance at happiness and crushed it," who doesn't feel that? We exhale and go, yeah, I get it, man. Life is really unfair sometimes. This scene only hits harder as you grow older. Ask any SpongeBob fan. What are the top 5 Squidward episodes they love the most? Or heck, even their top 5 SpongeBob episodes in general. Band Geeks is always there. Always. Why? Because this episode gives a freaking W to everyone. Nobody is stepped on in this sweet victory. Well, except Squilliam. But then again, he didn't get called out and humiliated in front of the Bubble Bowl. He just lost his chance to laugh at Squidward. And that's a win in my book. Band Geeks proves something people often forget about SpongeBob. Under all the jokes, the yelling, and the chaos, there's always a complex character sitting right underneath it, just waiting for you to notice. You just have to feel it. And honestly, I think that's what makes a lot of fan-made SpongeBob AU so interesting. On the surface, that whole alternate universe looks like pure chaos. Worms, decay, bad patties, people biting each other. But if you slow down and actually look at the pieces of clues, you start to see the real story underneath. Modern SpongeBob characters are loud, chaotic, and flat. Back then, every single character felt special. But today, they're barely recognizable. Where did it all go wrong? There was a time when SpongeBob felt special. He wasn't just funny, he was real. Not in the realistic sense, obviously, he's a sponge working at a fast food joint. But we used to feel connected with him. His character was cheerful most of the time, yeah, but there were times when he also got nervous, confused, even embarrassed. He cared when people didn't like him. He wanted to be good at his job, to be respected, to make people proud, especially Mr. Krabs. His character is so dynamic because there are so many emotions packed into one sponge. Often in a single episode, his mood could change quickly in just a few seconds.
Or am I gonna
We could see it since the very first episode of Help Wanted. SpongeBob is excited to start his new job as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab.
With a Help Wanted sign in the window. For years I've been dreaming of this moment.
This is an interesting detail because he knows that he was being excited and thinking he might be getting ahead of himself, so he's losing confidence. This kind of details the reason why kids, even adults, feel connected to him. SpongeBob didn't just act like a kid, he felt like one. He thinks like a kid, he behaves like a kid, even living his life like a kid. That's what makes his character funny in the first place. Seeing a naive kid trying to fit into an adult environment with the most ridiculous ways possible is the jokes. SpongeBob was the anchor of the show's heart. His positivity balanced the cynicism of Squidward, the stupidity of Patrick, and the greed of Mr. Krabs. We could see this also when he tried so hard to deliver that pizza. even after being stranded in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't want to fail Mr. Krabs for giving the job to him. That optimism was honest. It came from effort, not just volume. The first SpongeBob SquarePants movie is probably the last time we saw this version of SpongeBob. Right after the first movie, SpongeBob character became somewhat energetic. They pushed the joke into different directions, using slapstick jokes with lots of gross stuff and uncomfortable visuals. They also take advantage of the joke that SpongeBob laughs are unique.
This.
To some people, it's a funny experience, but when it's used continuously with each episode, they start to force it into the joke, which makes it annoying. And fast forward to the present. Today's SpongeBob feels emotionless, to say the least. It feels like he performs those emotions. He laughs because that's what SpongeBob does, not because anything's actually funny. It's just obnoxiously loud. Somehow it feels like they dumbed down on the show overall. Instead of properly setting up jokes, they used more and more random slapstick jokes to get as many laughs as possible. It's all noise and weird expressions, all the time. Which is probably to always keep people engaged, especially the kids, because kids nowadays have short attention spans. So maybe the show writer tried to keep them hooked every 10 seconds with a weird face expression, just like scrolling through social media. The show stopped asking us to feel with him and started begging us to laugh at him. We rarely see SpongeBob having a monologue with himself these days. His character stops being self-conscious, and it shows. Instead of a character with real feelings, we got a hyperactive mascot, and it's pretty sad to see. The noise gets louder, but the heart gets quieter. And if SpongeBob is the chaos engine, then Patrick is the wrecking ball. Patrick is a dumb sea star. That's not a secret, but there was something endearing about it. He was SpongeBob's ride-or-die best friend, sweet, loyal, and goofy in a way that made you want to protect him. His brain wasn't exactly firing on all cylinders, but there was a weird wisdom there. It's not about winning, it's about fun. Or that iconic line,
"The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma."
In the early episodes like Big Pink Loser, we saw him try and fail numerous times. He's not giving up simply because he wants to accomplish something, a trophy. Though he ends up getting one himself for literally not doing anything. Yeah, it's weird, but it's also a heartwarming resolution for his character. It's better to be yourself rather than to be someone else just because you want to be recognized. He wasn't smart, but he cared for people around him. And when he messed up, it came from misunderstanding, not malice. But somewhere along the way, Patrick's character went off the rails. He didn't just get dumber, he got mean. Where his stupidity used to come from innocence, now it comes from apathy. He started being selfish, destructive, and honestly, kinda toxic. Instead of helping SpongeBob, he started hurting him, on purpose, or through mindless recklessness. They took the one thing kids loved, Patrick's dumb, and cranked it up until it swallowed everything else. These days, Patrick is basically a walking disaster. He breaks things, hurts people, and shrugs it off like it's part of the joke. And the worst part? The show plays it off like it's funny. It's not. Like in Pet Sitter Pat, he nearly kills Gary through sheer neglect. That is the joke for the whole episode. Early Patrick would have felt bad. New Patrick just shrugs, drools, and continues to break something else. In the recent episode, Pet the Rock from season 14, Patrick just became somewhat psychotic.
SpongeBob!
What was that about? Is he getting PBA disorder like the Joker now? That's the joke? Patrick cannot control his emotions anymore? Later in the episode, Patrick is taking his pet rock to the park. And guess what happened?
Whoa, Rolly! You want to play with everyone today!
This guy just pummeled everyone in the park out of nowhere, and that's supposed to be funny? When you make a character so stupid that they lose empathy, they stop being fun to watch. In earlier episodes, Patrick was at least competent enough to do simple stuff. Now it feels like he's too stupid to function. He's not funny because he's confused anymore. He's funny because he's a problem. Sure, the show tries to give him emotional moments now and then, but they fall flat because the groundwork isn't there anymore. You can't care about a character who's been written into a mean joke too many times. And with Patrick turning into a wrecking ball, Squidward turns into a punching bag. Squidward was never meant to be a hero, but for a lot of us, he kind of became one. In the city full of absurdity, Squidward's cynicism became a sort of reality check. He was tired, underappreciated, stuck in a job he hated, and surrounded by people he didn't understand. He was us on a Monday morning, just trying to get through it without losing it completely. And honestly, he handled it better than most of us would. But underneath all that bitterness, there was ambition, sensitivity, even sadness. Sometimes he just lost it, and I wouldn't blame him. It's not easy being Squidward.
And a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4.
But here's the thing. Squidward's pain is not the punchline. Episodes like Squidville showed us that Squidward wasn't just a grump. He was a guy trying to find meaning, trying to chase something better. But he kept getting dragged down by conditions, which is funny, but also kind of heartbreaking. And when he won, like in Band Geeks, it felt huge, like watching someone finally catch a break after years of chaos. These ups and downs in his story are the essence of his character. His trait of cynicism is caused by years of failure and frustration. This is also the reason why many of us felt related with Squidward's story when we grew up, because he is the regular person in the show. Those little victories, they mattered. But now, he doesn't win, ever. Squidward stopped being a character and started being a crash test dummy. Every episode, he suffers. He's humiliated, injured, embarrassed, sometimes for no reason other than SpongeBob and Patrick existing near him. My guy can't catch a break. You don't get it. He's a funny character because he's sassy and cynical even when he hits rock bottom, not because we love to see him getting tortured. Episodes like Ink Lemonade don't just push the joke, they grind it into the ground. SpongeBob and Patrick discover that every time Squidward gets jumped or scared, he's spewing out his ink, which turns out to be delicious.
That's delicious!
They continue to scare Squidward to death just so they could sell Squidward ink to people. What the? Aside from the joke, I kind of felt bad for him. They just milked him for the whole episode. Maybe milking him wasn't the right word, but you get what I mean. At this point, Squidward could fall into a volcano, and the show would probably add a fart sound and call it a day. No lesson, no moment, just pain.
What the?
In the old seasons, when Squidward got hurt, it usually felt earned. Because he was being arrogant or dismissive, now he just gets punished for existing, and it's exhausting to watch. In Season 13 alone, there are at least 5 episodes where SpongeBob tortures Squidward as a main focus of the story. It could be more, since I haven't yet watched every episode. You can only watch someone lose so many times before it stops being funny and just starts feeling cruel. And when every pain turns into a joke, none of them stick. But you know what's also painful? Seeing your boss turn into a capitalist. Mr. Krabs has always been about money. That's nothing new. But early on, his greed was simply a bad habit, not all that he was. Yeah, he was cheap, sure. He exploited his employees a little, but deep down, he had a heart. He is a proud business owner and cares about his daughter. Sometimes we could see him being a father figure to SpongeBob. In episodes like Sleepy Time, Mr. Krabs dreamed about sailing with his daughter. Or Welcome to the Chum Bucket, where we saw that he cared about SpongeBob. And for a split second, money doesn't really matter. These little details in the story really showcase Krabs' personality outside the work environment. He had a history, a daughter, even regrets as a father. He could be selfish, but he wasn't soulless. There were lines he wouldn't cross, especially for the closest person. Then, post-movie, especially by Season 7 and beyond, greed took over everything. Those lines disappeared. And what used to be a flaw became a full-blown personality. Literally. As the show progressed, Mr. Krabs' character underwent a process known as flanderization, where his negative traits were amplified and became the dominant aspect of his personality. The worst part is how the show treats his relationship with SpongeBob. He used to respect SpongeBob's loyalty, now he takes advantage of it. SpongeBob practically worships the guy, and Krabs just manipulates him, underpays him, and throws him under the bus whenever it's convenient. The charm is gone. What was once a greedy but lovable boss has turned into a one-note character with zero emotional weight. Want more convincing proof? The official channel of SpongeBob SquarePants itself made a compilation clip of Best of Mr. Krabs Being a Dad a while ago. And guess what? There are no clips from Season 9 or after. The most recent episode they used in the video is from Barnacle Face from Season 8. They couldn't find a dad moment in the later seasons because there are no more wholesome moments after Season 8. Just an old, greedy crustacean. And that's the issue. When every decision a character makes is about money, you can't tell real stories with them anymore. We just know somewhere along the episode, he'll just stab someone in his back for a profit. Once SpongeBob became a billion-dollar brand, it's almost like Krabs' character turned into a parody of the show itself. Anything for $1. And when the character stops growing, the story stops mattering. There's nothing left to explore, just new ways for him to be a jerk. But speaking about exploration, there are no characters in the show who represent exploration better than Sandy Cheeks. Sandy is one of the most interesting characters in SpongeBob. As a kid, I just loved her simply because she's a tough character. She had big goals in mind, and we know she'll always come up with a plan to reach it. She is proud to be the first mammal to break the underwater ceiling, and she is not just smart, she's also a caring friend who is always ready to stop the chaos made by SpongeBob and Patrick. Sometimes she just throws parties and surprises for her closest friends, just like the chocolate balloon for Patrick on Valentine's Day. Another episode, such as Karate Choppers, highlighted her stubbornness, and how she challenged SpongeBob in a way no one else did. And episodes like Texas showed her homesickness, her pride in where she came from. Behind all that muscle and big brain move, we could see her just wanting warmth every now and then. She added variety to the group. The land mammal with intellect and discipline, pushing SpongeBob and others to think, to train and improve. But as the seasons dragged on, Sandy faded into the background. She became the default science solution for every weird problem. Need a shrink ray? A cloning machine? A brain switcher? Call Sandy. The show stopped treating her like a character and started treating her like a tool. And the saddest part for me is that she loses the southern charm. Those adventurous spirits, the warm southern hospitality, and her appreciative moments are just gone. Well, at least she still has that southern Texas accent, but that alone isn't enough to showcase her character. She even rarely interacts meaningfully with the rest of the cast. The last time we could still see her having character is somewhere between season 7 and 8, with some episodes like Rodeo Days and Someone in the Kitchen with Sandy. There is some character depth there, but still not as good as the early seasons. And don't get me started with the Sandy Cheeks movie. Just, don't. I don't even want to talk about that. But don't get me wrong, I do kind of understand the reason behind her changes. Sandy's rational character used to be the balance in the middle of the bizarre Bikini Bottom. She often challenges SpongeBob and the others to be better. As the show leaned into the crazier sci-fi plots and most of the characters get simplified, they can't really make Sandy challenge them anymore. Instead, they made her help the chaos to be bigger every single time. Her personality didn't fit the new formula, so they boxed her into one trait: smart. Simple, marketable, forgettable. Sandy Cheeks went from being one of the show's most well-rounded personalities to someone who shows up when the writers need a Deus Ex squirrel. And when the show needed someone to be hated, they called Plankton. Plankton was never going to win. But that wasn't the point. He was 2 inches tall, owned the world's worst restaurant, and had one customer. A fake one. Similar to Squidward, Plankton's character often revolves around failure and insecurity. He was constantly trying to prove he was more than a loser. He wanted the Krabby Patty formula, sure, but what he really wanted was respect. And when you add Karen, his computer wife, you get some genuinely funny and emotional moments. It was dysfunctional, sure, but you could still feel for them. Episodes like FUN showed that he wasn't all evil. He was just desperate, and sometimes just sad. In the episode, SpongeBob sees through Plankton. He tries to be his friend, and for a minute, Plankton almost puts the evil aside, before his greed took over and ruined the friendship. That kind of story gave him layers. Sure, he was the antagonist, but you kind of wanted him to get one win, just once. Because sometime, someone has to teach that greedy crab a lesson, right? There was also an episode where Plankton gave up on trying to steal the Krabby Patty recipe. he decides to shut down the Chum Bucket and open up a gift shop called Chumporium. He also manages to fix his relationship with Krabs and go to a carnival together. Both of them said sorry, and Krabs gave him the formula as a kind gesture. A good redemption story, in my opinion. Well, he's not really changed, technically, since, spoiler alert, the whole gift shop is a ruse, as a trick to soften up Krabs, making him hand over his recipe willingly. Fortunately, Krabs did outsmart him in the end.
I never give you the formula!
Still, a good arc for Plankton. It gives him some depth. But fast forward into the recent season, Plankton just became a one-liner joke. And not even a funny one. His plans stopped being clever, and his personality flattened. He's not insecure anymore, he's just loud, over the top, and constantly getting humiliated. The writers turned him into a one-trick pony. Step 1, making a scheme. Step 2, fail and get humiliated. Step 3, scream. That's it. But it gets worse. The dynamic with Karen, which used to be this funny, weird little marriage, turned into the same recycled gag. Plankton fucked up, Karen insults him, Plankton yells back, Karen's coming up with something, and repeat. Plankton's case is a tragedy in my opinion. He was a good character for the villain role. He is capable of showing so many emotions for a single-celled animal, especially with his long frenemy, Krabs. It could lead to something great once his character developed, but that takes time to build. And the new version of the show didn't want to build, it wanted to sprint. So Plankton stopped being sympathetic and started being a pity. Instead of growth, they gave him a loop, just reruns with new disguises. His character just stuck, like the show itself. These characters were pulled apart, torn down, and flattened piece by piece over the years. A cast of characters that once felt alive, just gone. It's clear that today's SpongeBob is made specifically for kids, and maybe that's the real reason we don't find the new ones enjoyable, because most of us who watched and loved early SpongeBob are not kids anymore.
At first glance, no kid should love the character of Squidward Tentacles. And yet, if you ask any fan of SpongeBob today who their favorite character is, a huge percentage of them are going to say Squidward. So I realize somewhere along our journey of watching this show, our feelings on Squidward changed. And mind you, it didn't happen in just one episode. Since there's no big overall redemption arc in Bikini Bottom, Squidward in Season 1 is, mechanically speaking, the same character as Squidward in Season 9. So if he didn't change, what did? To answer that, we have to go back to the very first time we met him, back to who Squidward was before any of us had any reason to feel sorry for him. If there's one word to describe Squidward, it's grumpy. He hates his job. He also fails at everything he tries. And if you keep going, he checks almost every single one of those no fun checkboxes in a kid's cartoon, making him a character archetype that usually exists to be the obstacle, the killjoy, or the one we're supposed to root against. That much is very obvious from the first season of SpongeBob. And the reason I brought this up here is because I realized something a few days ago. So I started watching SpongeBob from Season 1 again while trying to forget about everything. I did it because I wanted to try the whole if I could forget and experience it for the first time again kind of thing, right? And if you saw Squidward just from the first few episodes of him, he is that snobby character, right? In Help Wanted, he seems like he would become the snarky co-worker in the Krusty Krab for SpongeBob in future episodes. And in Bubble Stand, he won't let SpongeBob and Patrick have fun without trying to outdo them, even though a few minutes earlier, he thinks it's ridiculous to even try. Even more than that, in Culture Shock, a good chunk of the episode revolves around him being humiliated when his so-called sophisticated taste fails to impress anyone. Saying all that, it's very easy to get an impression of this guy thinks he's better than everyone, and he isn't. He's pretentious, bitter, sometimes full of ego, and yet he hasn't figured out his life enough to back up any of it. Whereas SpongeBob, in retrospect, seems like the saint in some of those episodes. SpongeBob often looks like he enjoys things as they are. He doesn't compare himself to to other people and laughs more in a single episode than Squidward does in a full season. So I think this is where people, or mostly kids, start to generalize that SpongeBob is the fun one. Squidward is no fun. In fact, you might think of him as the bad example of adults for future reference. Since you don't have to be miserable like Squidward when you grow up, you could just be happy like SpongeBob. And so, because of that assumption, there's a few episodes where Squidward losing is the main joke, which feels good when it happens, like jellyfishing, where Squidward spends most of the episode in a full body cast and still gets stung by the giant jellyfish at the very end of it. Again, all because he thinks jellyfishing is such a ridiculous activity. Or maybe even Fools in April, where he's clearly being overly mean by pranking SpongeBob in front of everyone. And we kind of go along with it. I mean, of course Squidward got what he deserved. He's been awful all episode, but then certain episodes start showing us that he still has more to his character. Squidward isn't always just standing on the sidelines being miserable and missing all the fun. Sometimes he's right there in the chaos. He's just doing it his own way. Take Employee of the Month. You would think that someone like Squidward couldn't care less about these kinds of things, which he actually does. He outright calls it a scam.
Mr. Krabs gives you that award so you'll work harder for no extra money.
But as the episode goes on, SpongeBob keeps saying that the award does mean something. He even goes as far as convincing himself that Squidward only says it's worthless just to make him let his guard down, then claiming the victory at the very end. Then, when Squidward confronts SpongeBob for breaking his clock in an effort to sabotage him, he confidently says that he could get the awards if he wanted to, without so much effort. Which, of course, only makes SpongeBob more determined.
That's it, Square for Brains, that's it! I'm gonna show you how easy it is to win that award!
The rest of the episode is about them trying to sabotage each other just so they could reach the Krusty Krab first. They would throw obstacle after obstacle in each other's way, which escalated to the point where they tried to drag themselves while being strapped to a ship and a huge anchor. This shows us that Squidward really could do it if he wanted to. He just lacked the passion to do it most of the time. And the rare times that he does, it is mostly out of spite to make a point to SpongeBob or Patrick. As for episodes like Shanghai, he really showed us why he is the perfect person to complete the dynamic of the three. Maybe he's not the comic relief in the way SpongeBob is, nor the lovable idiot like Patrick. He's the bitter, sarcastic, slightly unhinged kind of funny person, just for the fact that he can be dragged into the dumbest situation imaginable while still saying exactly how stupid this is. So then we get this sort of realization that Squidward is a funny guy too. He just has his own taste of comedy. And somewhere along the way, we slowly realized he's not actually a bad person. I think no episode tells us better than Dying for Pie. One day, Squidward, trying to play along with the Employee Brotherhood Day for once, accidentally buys SpongeBob a pie made by pirates that turns out to be a bomb. But the moment he realizes SpongeBob is going to die from eating it, the guy doesn't run in regret. He spends the entire day trying to give SpongeBob the best last day of his life. He would sit through every annoying activity SpongeBob picks. He's miserable the whole time, of course, this is still Squidward, but he does it anyway for SpongeBob. And the thing is, nobody asked him to. SpongeBob doesn't even know he's supposedly dying. Squidward is doing all of this completely on his own, out of some sense that this is just what you do when someone you know is about to die, even if that someone drives you up the wall on a daily basis. Even in Hooky, when SpongeBob is about to get pulled away by the hooks at the very end, it turns out Squidward is the one doing it for the sake of teaching SpongeBob a lesson, since SpongeBob keeps playing with it even if he told them not to. I mean, granted, he does it willingly because he gets to humiliate SpongeBob in the process, but it's still a nice thing to do.
Do you think the lad has learned his lesson?
Oh, I think he'll remember this for a long time.
Squidward isn't going to make you feel good for getting his help, but when something is genuinely on the line, he'll be there. So then, if he's funny and he's a decent person who's capable of caring about people, why is he so grumpy? Why is he the way he is? Turns out the show has been telling us all along. We just weren't always seeing it. Squidward is not the luckiest person in Bikini Bottom. We rarely see the stars align for him to have the life he always wanted. he had to work very hard for each of his possessions. An episode like Can You Spare a Dime is a good example for it. After the whole fight about being accused of stealing Mr. Krabs' first dime, Squidward decides to quit the Krusty Krab on the spot, and he walks out for good. In fact, it might be the perfect time to really chase his long-term dreams, since, according to him, he could do anything he wants to, right?
I can become anything I set my mind to. I could be a football player or a king.
And then the next scene happens. He can't find another job, and soon he loses everything in his possession, including his paintings, which he eats, and eventually the only place he has left to go is the streets. Now, despite the rest of the episode turning out to be about Squidward being an ungrateful friend and keeps taking advantage of SpongeBob's kindness, down to visualizing his wildest dreams because he told SpongeBob to wear a maid costume while doing it, my argument is that Squidward is living the normal life in Bikini Bottom. Contrary to what he believes, Squidward can't just start picking up any hobby and be a genius in it, like SpongeBob did in some episodes, like Artist Unknown. Not to mention, outside of SpongeBob and Patrick, most of the people in Bikini Bottom don't seem all that keen on Squidward either, especially his longtime nemesis, Squilliam. He sure loves to rub the difference in their lives in Squidward's face. Now, it all might have to do with how Squidward treats people in the first place, but there's a chance it's the other way around too. Like Squidward's grumpy because people were never really nice to him. It's two things causing each other, right? You might say that. That is not even taking into account some of the extraordinary experiences Squidward has to go through, like maybe SB-129, but those might be a special case. It's just, think about how much weight one guy is carrying. There's not much working in your favor. Nobody really likes you, except for your two goofy neighbors who you also hate for some reason. And you know for a fact that life isn't going to be much better than this. You've tried before and failed miserably, so it's just surviving for now. Maybe all the grumpiness isn't all he is. It's just what's left in him. Who knows? So back to the question we started with. Why do so many adults grow up loving Squidward? Because, ironically, somewhere in our adulthood, we started living his life. You get a job, the job itself is fine, but maybe it's not what you imagined. Your dreams get pushed to the weekend, and then to the month, and then to someday. There's a day where you finally sit down to enjoy the one thing that brings you peace, and then your phone rings. It could be the boss's emails, or maybe some single brain-celled friend wants to hang out. And no matter how hard you try, life keeps finding new ways to interrupt the version of you that was actually happy. And yet, here's the thing, we don't love Squidward's life, we never wanted his life. If anything, we spent most of our childhood trying not to end up like him, and then we ended up like him anyway. What we love is him, because there's no bond quite like the one you get from pulling through the same thing as someone else. We love him the way you love a coworker who's drowning at the same job you're drowning at, someone who understands your world without you having to explain. Squidward didn't change. We did. We grew up. We got tired, and one day we looked over at the grumpy octopus we used to roll our eyes at and realized he wasn't the cautionary tale we thought he was. He was just early. And honestly, the more you sit with it, the more you start to realize this isn't just a Squidward thing. SpongeBob has been quietly doing this kind of secret messaging for decades, telling us about adulthood, about work, about the world we actually live in, all while disguised as a kid's show about a yellow sponge. I've been doing this for a while. Long enough that I've got a whole compilation of theories about this show sitting in one video already. If any of what we just talked about had you going, wait, what else is buried in this show? That's the one. It's the mega compilation. I'll leave it up on screen. Go check it out when you're done here. I'll see you in the next dive.